Collector Hero, Synthesis. Midoriya Izuku was a nice boy, his parents adored him, and his preschool teachers praised his kindness and willingness to share. The little green-haired boy was a delight to be around, but he was also quite a mystery. By age 4, when most children begin to manifest their quirks, Izuku hadn't shown any sign of change, so his mother took him to the doctor. Doctor's office. I don't understand it. The doctor mumbled as he looked over the results of Izuku's tests. Midoriya Inko, Izuku's mother, looked on worriedly before speaking up. Doctor, is there something wrong? Inko questioned as she held on to her little boy. Not wrong, Peresi, the doctor replied. But I've never quite seen anything like this before. What do you mean? Inko asked, starting to worry more for her son. According to all of the tests, Izuku not only has a quirk, but it should be ridiculously powerful and obvious. The strength of his quirk factor alone is astounding. I've never seen marks this high before. Little Izuku has more quirk potential than several dozen full-grown adults. It's mind-boggling. The doctor informed the mother and son as he continued to look over the test results. So he does have a quirk. Inko wanted to be sure. Most assuredly, Midoriya-san, every test has come back positive. The doctor confirmed. The only thing I can tell you for sure about it is that it's a mutant-type quirk. Beyond that, it, in all honesty, should already be incredibly obvious. The fact that it's not is truly baffling. What should we do? Inko inquired, and the doctor could only give her the basics. Keep watch on Izuku, check for any physical changes or sudden mental developments. Both regeneration and mental enhancing quirks can fall under the mutant type. The doctor advised, and the mother nodded in understanding before bowing and leaving with her son. Izuku would go on to show no significant changes through the next few years. He was intelligent, to say the least, always within the top 10 or even the top 5 of his classes. Unfortunately for the young green-haired boy, none of his peers believed him when he told them he had a quirk. Without anything to show them, the other kids wouldn't believe that Izuku had a quirk at all. It was his friend Kaken that had started the exclusion of Izuku from his peers. The young ash-blonde boy had found out about the term quirkless and applied it to the young boy. Without anything to show them to prove them wrong, Izuku quickly found himself an outsider among his classmates. You ready to head out, Izuku? Inko asked her son as the 11-year-old finished tying his shoes. The two were headed out for some shopping together, and Inko planned to buy Izuku some All Might merchandise that would hopefully put a smile on her son's face. To the worried mother, her son didn't smile enough. She knew that he had no real friends because his quirk was still a complete mystery. She suspected that he was even seen as quirkless by the other kids his age. But until his quirk actually did something that could be cataloged as an ability, there wasn't much either of them could do. She'd held out hope that they had discovered his quirk a couple of years ago. Izuku was always a smart boy, but when he first saw her quirk in action, he'd quickly understood it. The few times he'd seen his father, Hisashi, use his fire breath quirk, the little boy had quickly figured out how it worked, and that his father had hit the limit of his quirk's ability, just as Inko had when she was a teenager. Unfortunately, a trip to the doctor's office had rendered the idea of an intelligence-enhancing quirk out. Izuku simply didn't have the marks of that type of quirk on his test results. I'm ready. Izuku smiled slightly at his mother, and the two left their apartment. Hisashi was at work. Even on a Saturday, he sometimes had to go into work. The man was hopeful that his importance to the company meant that he'd be getting a rumored promotion that had been going around his office recently. The mother and son made their way towards the market and began to shop for groceries. Everything was normal on this Saturday. The sun was out, and it was pleasantly warm. A few white clouds drifted lazily across the sky, and people were in a good mood. Walking back home, Inko smiled as Izuku happily looked over the new All Might figure they'd stopped at a shop to buy. It happened so quickly. A sudden scream, a large crash, people running. Inko lost sight of Izuku for a moment. Get out of my way, a loud voice yelled, followed by the one sound a mother never wanted to hear. The sound of her child screaming in pain. Monster! A different voice roared out, followed by another crash. When the crowd had cleared out a bit, Inko saw a pro-hero, Shishido, if she remembered hearing from Izuku correctly, repeatedly punching a man with long sickle-like blades coming from his arms. The villain was pinned and looked to already be unconscious, but the pro seemed almost feral in his rage. Izuku! Inko questioned, looking for her little boy. Her blood ran cold upon seeing her baby laid out on the ground, red blood pooling under him. Izuku. She ran to her child's side, and her scream seemed to snap the lion hero from his rage. He quickly cuffed the villain and ran over to assist. Izuku was unconscious, and Inko was panicking as she saw the large cut across her son's torso. Damn! Shishido grimaced as he grabbed the hem of his costume and used his strength to tear it off. He was quick to fold the cloth and place it over the large laceration on the boy. "Ma'am, hold this. Keep the pressure on the injury to help stop the bleeding." The pro instructed, and Inko wasted no time in following the instructions. "I've got a code 47C at dash." Shishido started speaking into a police radio, but Inko had already tuned the pro out, her complete focus on her injured son, while tears poured from her eyes. The next hour was a complete blur to Inko. She barely remembered anything other than calling Hisashi and trying to tell him what happened. Hisashi had practically torn the hospital doors off their hinges when he arrived. Now both parents were sitting in a waiting room holding each other. Both had red eyes from their tears when a doctor approached them. "Midoriya-san," she asked, and both parents nodded. "Izuku is stable, and he'll make a full recovery." She gave them a soft smile as she watched the tension and fear practically fall off the parents' shoulders. "Can we see him?" Inko and Hisashi asked in unison. "Of course, please follow me," the doctor replied as she led them to Izuku's recovery room. Hisashi and Inko saw Izuku sleeping in a hospital bed and were at his side so quickly the doctor almost thought they had speed quirks for a second. Overall, Izuku seemed fine. Gauze bandages were wrapped around his chest, and there was an four in his arm, but other than those two things, the boy just appeared to be sleeping. "Will there be any lasting side effects?" Hisashi asked, seeing his son sleeping peacefully. "Aside from a thin scar, no." The doctor shook her head. The villain's quirk was deadly, but it also cut incredibly cleanly. It was very easy to mend, and Izuku responded well to one of our nurses' healing quirk. He didn't even need stitches. "Thank goodness." Inko sniffled as she held her son's hand as he slept. The two parents stayed with their son the whole night, and in the morning both were awoken to the sound of their son's voice. It was a joyous set of parents that, gently, hugged their son that morning, and Izuku had to be filled in on what had occurred. The young boy had only the brief memory of the villain heading his way and a flash of pain. "Midoriya-kun, are you hungry?" a nurse asked as she held a tray of food in her hands. Seeing the boy nod, the nurse smiled at the cute boy and placed his food on the movable table and let the boy start his breakfast. Inko and Hisashi asked where the cafeteria was, and Hisashi left to get breakfast for Inko and himself. Izuku seemed rather hungry and was done with his breakfast several minutes before Hisashi came back. In that time, though, Inko noticed her son develop his thinking face that he did when he was analyzing a quirk. The strangest part about seeing him do it now, other than the fact that she was the only one in the room and he'd already studied her quirk completely, was that her son was looking at his own hand while slowly clenching and opening his hand. "Izuku, are you okay?" Inko asked, and Izuku turned to her with an indecipherable look before he spoke. "I think I have a quirk," Izuku confusedly replied as he put the tip of his index finger behind the tip of his thumb and then flicked at an empty plastic cup that had once had juice in it. The cup, several inches away from his fingers, flipped over and landed on the sheets of his bed. Inko stared wide-eyed at what her son had just done before smiling widely and hugging her son gently. "Oh, Izuku, I knew you'd figure it out eventually." Inko congratulated her son on finally figuring out his quirk. It seemed it may even be an offshoot of hers. "What did I miss?" Hisashi came into the room with his and Inko's food to see his wife smiling happily, while Izuku looked confused while staring at his hands. The following explanation and demonstration brought a smile to the father's face. The only oddity was that Izuku still seemed to be confused by his new quirk. To both parents, it seemed their son wasn't able to truly figure out his new ability. The rest of the day was spent bringing in the hospital's resident quirk specialist to help the family figure out Izuku's ability and get it registered. The specialist, however, wanted to look into the family history to see potential links between Izuku's quirk and his parents and grandparents. The only close resemblance seemed to be Inko's attraction of small objects quirk, but in reverse. Izuku, however, was the one that shot that theory down. "That's not it." Izuku spoke up, and his parents as well as the specialist turned to him curiously. This quirk is an emitter type. My quirk is a mutant type. This led to the specialist running the quirk typing test on the boy and confirming that Izuku did indeed have a mutant type quirk, but that his results now showed he also had the emitter trait on his test. I've never seen this before. The specialist commented as he looked over the original test that had been done on Izuku, showing the boy to only have the mutant trait. He then turned his gaze to the new test showing both the mutant and emitter traits. How in the world? The family stayed at the hospital for another 2 days. In that time, Izuku was given a full body scan and high-focus scans of his skin from head to toe. While these were taking place, the quirk specialist had called in other specialists, and they'd set about checking the National Quirk Registry for any quirks that matched what Izuku had displayed so far. At the end of the second day, the Midoriya family, nay the entire country, potentially the world, would be shocked beyond belief. It's force projection, the original specialist reported, and all 3 Midoriyas blinked at the man. It's a quirk registered to a young pro MMA fighter. He's rather popular and goes to blood drives to help increase turnout and donations. Izuku has somehow obtained his quirk, or a copy of it at least. But how? Inko questioned while Hisashi looked on in confused concern for his son. I believe that the blood that Izuku was given during his transfusion was from the young man. A different specialist spoke up. She was one of the ones called in by the original. As crazy as it sounds, Izuku's mutant quirk is the ability to copy quirks from the blood of others. Huh. Hisashi couldn't hold back his exclamation of confused shock. I know. It's fascinating. A third specialist smiled, though he quickly toned himself down seeing the looks he got from the parents and his own colleagues. Sorry, but this is truly unprecedented. A quirk capable of permanently copying other quirks has never been seen before. So I have to have blood transfusions to gain a copy of a quirk? Izuku asked, his head tilted slightly and his eyes looking between the 3 specialists. Not quite, young man. The initial specialist informed him as he pulled a few pictures from the file he was holding. These are images of your hands, Izuku, magnified about 100 times. The Midoriya family looked at the pictures, and the specialist pointed to tiny spots all over Izuku's palms. These are about as thick as a human hair. Compiling these images with the internal images we got from the full-body scan shows that these spots are microtubes that connect to Izuku's bloodstream. We believe his mutant quirk utilizes these micro spots to potentially extract blood from a person and use that to copy their quirk. Both parents nodded to the explanation, but still appeared rather lost. Izuku stared at his hands for a bit before the third specialist spoke up again. If you're up for it, young man, we could do one last test before you leave. He offered, and Izuku nodded in acceptance, after looking to his parents for permission. The test was moved to a room with a micro-imager, and 3 of the hospital staff were brought in, a female nurse, a male nurse, and the doctor that had performed Izuku's treatment. So what do I do? Izuku asked as he looked at the people in the room. Each of these staff has a different type of quirk, Izuku. We'd like you to hold on to their arm and try to actively copy their quirks. This is to see if you can copy every quirk type or only emitter quirks. The female specialist explained, and Izuku nodded. The female nurse stepped up first with a smile. Hello, Izuku. I'm glad to see you doing so much better. She smiled, getting one in return from the boy. My quirk is an emitter type called Healing Aura. You responded well to it when we were closing up your injury. Thank you for that, Izuku said with a bow. And for this too. The nurse smiled and waved off his thanks before holding out her arm for him. Izuku placed his hand on the offered arm and focused on copying her quirk. Izuku didn't feel anything, and neither did the nurse. Move over to the imager, please. The first specialist instructed the nurse, and she placed her arm under the device's lens. A minute later, and the specialist nodded. It seems to have worked. The imager shows multiple micro-punctures that have almost instantly healed up. Is this it? Izuku asked as he held up his hands, and a light green glow emitted from them. The nurse smiled at the boy and nodded. That's Healing Aura, all right. I hope you'll put it to good use, Izuku. The nurse smiled kindly, and Izuku nodded rapidly as the glow dissipated from his hands. Well, this confirms he's not limited to just one of each type. He now has 2 emitter-type quirks. The third specialist nodded as he marked the result on his tablet. Guess I'll go next. The male nurse grinned as he briefly showed his quirk to Izuku by growing to double his original size. My quirk is a transformation type that I call Little Giant. He chuckled, and Izuku laughed at the name too. The man offered his arm to Izuku, and once again Izuku held onto the offered arm and focused on trying to copy the quirk. Just over a minute later, and Izuku scrunched up his face, as if he was trying hard to remember something, before he grew almost another half of his own height. This feels different, Izuku remarked as he slowly walked around at his new height. I don't feel like I can get any bigger than this, though, he remarked uncertainly. Strange, the male nurse commented. I can only go between regular height and giant size. Nothing in between, and it's always been exactly double my base height. He looks like he only went up about half of his height. Potentially unable to fully replicate transformation-type quirks, the female specialist remarked as she noted the difference. Because his base quirk is a mutant type, maybe he can't overly change his body composition or structure. Or maybe all transformation types are only able to express half power, she theorized, and both of the other specialists seemed to be considering this as well. That's still neat, though. Izuku smiled as he went back to his regular height. Have fun with it, big guy. The male nurse grinned as he ruffled Izuku's hair playfully. Guess I'm last. The female doctor smiled at Izuku kindly. My quirk isn't anything fancy, just a minor mutant type, she informed as she moved her hair aside, revealing two small horns on her head. I jokingly named them Oni horns. She grinned, and Izuku chuckled at her naming. Once again, Izuku placed his hand on an offered arm. After a few minutes of nothing happening, Izuku shook his head towards the specialists watching. I can't do it. There's nothing there. No feeling or anything. Izuku informed them, and all three specialists rapidly recorded the new information. Fascinating, simply fascinating, the third specialist remarked as he input the new data. So no ability to copy mutant types, perhaps because his quirk is itself a mutant type? The first specialist theorized as he looked over the information they had compiled. It seems that might be the case. The female specialist nodded as she looked over the results so far. Emitter copies at full power, transformation copies at half power, and mutant can't be copied at all. This is still incredible. Permanent copying has never been documented before. Even in this limited capacity, it's revolutionary to quirkology. The Midoriya family left the hospital to return home that afternoon with a healthy son and a new quirk registry. Registry. Name: Midoriya Izuku. Quirk: Collector. Type: Mutant. Subsets of both emitter and transformation as well due to quirk's properties. Registry. Izuku was pretty happy, all things considered, after his hospital stay. He'd finally figured out his quirk and had something to show to his peers. Maybe now they'd see he hadn't been lying these past 6 years. That evening, his parents had smiled and happily offered up their own quirks to be copied in hopes of helping Izuku's future hero career. Izuku and Inko had both held each other while tears streamed down their faces after the copying was confirmed successful. Hisashi chuckled fondly at his wife's and son's propensity for tears before pulling both of them into a big family hug. It was unfortunate that so much of a person's worth or self-worth was placed on their quirk in the modern era. Izuku had gone to his elementary school the following Monday and happily showed off what his quirk could do. While many were amazed, it didn't take long before that amazement turned to fear. A fear of losing the individuality that their quirk represented, of being less unique if Izuku also had their quirk. The green-haired boy quickly found himself ostracized again. He held out some small hope that Kaken wouldn't think his quirk was frightening, but was disappointed in a completely different way by his old friend. Keep your hands away from me, Deku. Bakugo Katsuki growled at the green-haired boy. You're not taking my explosion quirk just to make yourself worth something. But, Kaken, I wouldn't. Izuku tried to assure his friend that he'd never take a copy of his quirk without Katsuki's permission. But the ash blonde wouldn't hear it and told Izuku to stay away from him. The green-haired boy walked home alone that day with tears in his eyes. Inko had held him close and reassured him that everything would be okay in time, that he'd become an amazing hero and people would look up to him as a great example of helping society. Hisashi also comforted his son and told him that he'd find friends that wouldn't care about his quirk or that would think it was amazing in the future. Izuku would spend the last year of elementary school as a complete outcast regardless. For the first 2 years of junior high, this stayed the same as well. Most of the students in Aldera Junior High had come from the same elementary school as Izuku, so his quirk was quickly outed to any student that didn't already know. Maybe I should just quit. Izuku thought morosely as he walked up the stairs of the apartment complex. The Midoriya family would be moving out during the summer this year. Hisashi had gotten the promotion at his office and made much more money these days. For the last 2 years, he'd saved up, and now the family was putting the last bit of paperwork in to move into their new home, a nice 2-story house on the edge of Mizutofu. It even had a small backyard which Izuku was sure his parents would enjoy. His mother was interested in trying to start a garden once they'd moved in. "What's got you looking so down today, Midoriya-kun?" an old man asked as Izuku trudged towards the apartment. Izuku had spoken to this old man on several occasions since he'd been old enough to talk. Kanshu Saito was a retired policeman, the former head of villain transport for the Tokyo metropolitan area. The old man and his wife lived in the apartment complex just a few places down from the Midoriyas. "Nothing much, Kanshu-san." Izuku tried to smile, but the old man shook his head. "You know it's just Saito-ji for you, Midoriya-kun." Saito smiled at the young teen. "Tell me what's got you so upset." So Izuku told the old man about his treatment by his peers and the years of being excluded. After he finished, Izuku was surprised that he actually felt better. "Thank you for listening." Izuku bowed and Saito chuckled. "It wasn't a problem, Midoriya-kun," Saito assured. "But you shouldn't listen to those kids. All kids are a bit self-centered, and teenagers can be even more so. But if you want this old man's opinion, you'll do great things as a hero. I'd bet money on it." The old man chuckled, and Izuku smiled genuinely at the old man's honest support. "Thank you very much, Saito-ji." Izuku bowed again. "Tell you what, Midoriya-kun, why don't you copy my quirk? It got me to my old position in the police force. I'm sure a future great hero like you will put it to good use." Saito offered and held out his hand. Are you sure, Saito-ji?" Izuku asked, shocked. He'd trained with the quirks he'd already copied back when he discovered his quirk. He felt even with just force projection, healing aura, and half-giant as he'd taken to calling his only transformation copy, that he'd still make a pretty great hero. But Saito-ji's quirk would put him even further beyond that. Kanshu Sato's quirk was an emitter type and part of the rare erasure subtype of quirks. In the simplest terms, whoever Saito touched lost the ability to use their quirk until he let go. Hence the name, quirk nullification, though like most erasure type quirks it didn't do much to mutant types. But emitter and transformation users were as good as quirkless when under Sato's power. It'll do far more good in the hands of a young, up-and-coming hero than in this retired old man's. Most of the villains I had to transport gave up when they realized their quirks didn't work anymore. The look on some of their faces is still burned into my mind, to be honest. I guess if you've gone your whole life being able to do something, and then you suddenly can't, it shakes your worldview quite a bit. Saito commented, and Izuku nodded. It did sound plausible. If he suddenly wasn't able to walk for some reason, Izuku was sure that he'd be freaking out too. "Thank you again, Saito-ji. I won't let you down," Izuku promised as he reached out and shook the old man's hand. A minute later, and Izuku placed his hand on Sato's shoulder, and Saito placed his hand on Izuku's. The teen felt out the new ability and applied it, and then a few seconds later Saito tried to apply his quirk to Izuku. "Well, so that's what it feels like." Saito chuckled as he realized he wasn't able to use his quirk. His quirk nullification was nullified by Izuku's new copy of quirk nullification because he'd let the teen activate his first. "Good work, Midoriya-kun." "Thank you, Saito-ji. I'll put this to the best use I can." Izuku beamed at the older man. "I recommend learning some grappling techniques then." Saito chuckled. "If you know how to lock a person's arms or wrist, you'll keep control of them even if they try to flail around. Quirk nullification will keep their quirk inactive so long as you can maintain physical contact. Just be careful around mutant types. Some of those people can pack a heck of a punch," the old man advised while briefly rubbing his chest as if remembering such a blow. "That's a good idea." Izuku nodded in agreement. "You might look into asking others if they'd let you copy their quirks, Midoriya-kun." Saito said, and Izuku looked up at him confused. His ability to copy quirks was why his peers avoided him in the first place. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that would love to see their quirks put to use in hero work. Even if they themselves wouldn't be able to make it in the profession, maybe their quirks could do some good in the world. I guess I could consider it, Izuku admitted with a thoughtful look on his face. He had a few months left of his second year of junior high. The internet could potentially put him into contact with people who'd want to help out heroes, or a future hero in Izuku's case. Izuku continued the short walk to his apartment after saying goodbye to Saito. His mind was running through the potential of asking other people online to copy their quirks for a chance that their quirk would be used by a future hero. It wasn't the worst idea, and it could potentially give him the chance to help more people in the future. Over the next almost 18 months, Izuku would go online and onto hero fan forums with his offer. To his surprise, he'd actually gotten several replies accepting his offer and asking for a meetup time and place. He'd been safe and gone with his father for the first several meetups. All of them had been positive, however, with fans of heroes eager and happy that their weak or impractical quirks could be used to make a positive change in the world. In this manner, Izuku gathered copies of dozens of quirks within 8 months. The green-haired future hero then spent the final 10 months before his entrance exams for UA high school training with the various quirks, learning to use multiple quirks in synchronicity to create much more powerful effects. Though thinking back on Bakugo's reaction to Izuku's application to UA was annoying, yet another memory of the blonde that Izuku wished he didn't have. Flashback. You're all third years now. It's time for you to start seriously considering your futures. Their homeroom teacher told the class as he looked at them from the podium. While normally I would pass out these career aptitude tests, why bother? I know you all want to be heroes. The entire class, barring 2, cheered as they showed off their quirks. Yes, you all have very nice quirks, but using them at school is against the rules. So restrain yourselves. Hey, sensei, don't lump me in with all these extras. Bakugo spoke up. This lot would be lucky to end up as sidekicks to a busted D-lister. I'm the real deal. Predictably, his fellow classmates had something to say about that as they all tossed insults his way. Bring it on. I'll take you all on. You do have impressive test results. The teacher commented. Maybe you will get into UA. Cue the shocked exclamations of the rest of the class that Bakugo was trying to get into the #1 hero school. That's why UA is perfect for me. Bakugo replied as he stood up from his seat. I aced all the mock tests. I'm the only one at this school that stands a chance of getting in. I'll be more popular than All Might himself and become the richest hero of all time. People all across the world will know my name. And it all starts with UA. Oh yes, Midoriya, you applied for UA as well, right? The teacher asked, looking over his paperwork. Izuku sighed, knowing Bakugo's temper was going to flare, but still replied to his teacher. Yes, sensei. Izuku replied, and all of the other students whispered among themselves. Deku. Bakugo roared as he tried to slam his hand, bursts of his explosion quirk already going off, onto Izuku's desk. The sudden grip on the ash blonde's wrist and the disappearance of his explosion stopped all talking in the room cold. Please control yourself, Bakugo, Izuku requested as he nullified Bakugo's quirk. Get the hell off me, Bakugo yelled as he jerked his arm away from Izuku. Trying to copy my quirk? He accused the green-haired boy. I don't copy others' quirks without their permission, Bakugo, Izuku informed the explosive blonde. I also don't have any real interest in your quirk. Personally, it comes off as a bit too destructive when paired with a loose temper. What did you say? Bakugo growled, but the teacher had apparently recovered. Bakugo, sit down, the teacher demanded. Bakugo glared angrily at Izuku before stomping over to his seat. Did he just turn off Bakugo's quirk? A girl a row away from Izuku asked another one. I think he did, her friend replied back. How many quirks does Midoriya have? A male student whispered to another, only to get a shrug in response. If only they knew. Izuku thought to himself, a small flicker of amusement passing through him before he refocused on the teacher. In flashback, Izuku was getting ready to head to UA for the entrance exams while watching the morning news. Apparently, some good Samaritans had gone and cleaned up Dagoba Municipal Park Beach over the last few months. Izuku couldn't help but smile at that, It was a good deed done for others without any prompting. That was the kind of thing that heroes should do, helping others without being asked just because it was the right thing to do. Seeing the time, Izuku headed over to the door to put on his shoes. Izuku, do your best. We'll be cheering for you. Inko smiled at her son. Go get them, Izuku. We know you'll get in. Hisashi grinned at him, all the confidence in the world behind the father's words. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Izuku smiled at his parents before leaving and making his way to the train station. The ride to UA was only about 20 minutes by train, so Izuku just scrolled through his phone and went over a few topics to refresh his mind. The written exam was first, so Izuku wanted to make sure he was clear-headed and ready to cover any topic that would appear. Shortly after disembarking from the train, Izuku was standing before the gates of UA. Time to take my first step towards being a hero. He grinned to himself as he stepped past the gate and followed the signs towards the written exam site. After the written exam. Ow, my poor brain. Izuku grumbled as he massaged his temples. UA was not only the top hero school in Japan, but it boasted some of the best academic scores in the nation as well. The written test had clearly demonstrated that with the amount of subjects it covered, as well as the depth they went into each of them. Still, Izuku felt like he'd done well, at least well enough that he'd pass in the upper percentile. Probably. Lunch was taken after the written test, and then an instructional presentation would be given for the practical test. While Izuku was eating, he also looked over the other examinees to check out their quirks and potentially add more pages to his newest quirk notebook. Exam Site B. So just 3 types of robots to hunt down and 1 gimmick to try and avoid. Not too difficult. Izuku mumbled to himself as he stretched a bit while waiting for the exam to start. He was honestly still surprised at the large mock city that UA called a training site. The fact that UA had multiple sites like this one was amazing. Start. Present Mike called out loudly from where he stood on a platform at the top of a tower, his voice reaching out across the large testing grounds and to all the various groups of applicants. Everybody in Izuku's testing group froze up for a moment at the sudden start. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real life. Run. Go, go, go. With that, Izuku and the rest of the examinees dashed forward into the large mock cityscape. Izuku ran slightly off course from the main group of students and found his first target quickly, a 1-pointer according to the paper they'd gone over. Target acquired, eliminate. The machine intoned, and Izuku couldn't help but grin as it moved towards him. A bang went off, and the 1-pointer now had a hole in its head. The machine collapsed to the ground, and Izuku lowered his hand. So air compression, amplification, and force projection is enough to deal with the 1-pointers. Good to know. Izuku grinned as he activated another quirk, platform, then used force projection to leap off the ground and land on the floating square of air. Another assisted leap, and Izuku now stood on top of a building looking around for more targets. If I want to get the best score, I should go all out. Keeping property damage in mind, of course, wouldn't be surprised if that was factored into the overall score. So let's see. Izuku trailed off as he looked over the site, spotting a large gathering of robots of multiple point varieties off in one section of the cityscape that none of the other examinees had gotten to yet. Izuku grinned as he made great use of force projection from his feet to leap across the rooftops and reach the area first. Target acquired. Rang out over a dozen times as all the bots noticed him and took aim. This one's for you, Dad, Izuku announced as he took a deep breath. Fire breath, temperature fluctuation, heat generation, gas manipulation, and amplification. Izuku then exhaled a truly massive stream of fire towards the clustered robots. The veritable firestorm quickly engulfed and decimated the bots before they even got a shot off. When the flames petered out, a black scorch mark was left on the road along with the half-melted forms of the robots. Holy shit! What was that? Another examinee yelled, having apparently arrived just in time to witness Izuku's attack. Izuku paid the guy little attention before he jumped back towards the rooftops to continue hunting. Now I have to do one for Mom. Izuku smiled to himself as he dashed across the rooftops and headed for another untouched spot of the cityscape. There we go, he exclaimed at seeing a more spread-out group of robots on the street. Attraction of small things, mental boost, enhance function, force multiplier, and efficiency. All the small stones and pebbles that normally littered any street suddenly rocketed upwards at insane speeds, tearing through most of the robots. The storm of stones headed for Izuku before he grinned and activated the next quirk. Reverse force. The mass of tiny rocks suddenly stopped their movement, only to then shoot back towards the robots with the same speed they'd been rocketing towards Izuku at. Needless to say, the robots were perforated so badly, it looked like a military squadron had gone trigger-happy on the machines, leaving most of them in pieces all over the road. In the teacher's viewing booth. "What the hell is this kid's quirk?" Midnight exclaimed, completely confused by what she was witnessing from the green-haired examinee. "I thought he had some kind of air cannon quirk at first, or maybe air manipulation, but then he went and breathed a firestorm that would probably make Endeavor acknowledge him." Ectoplasm stated as he watched the boy. "Are we sure it isn't some kind of advanced psychokinesis?" Vlad King questioned as he looked on. "What is this young man?" Toshinori questioned himself mentally from the back of the room, watching the green-haired teen use what appeared to be multiple quirks. Could he have actually had a child? Maybe in the past, and his lineage has now come full circle? I'll need to keep an eye on this young man. The number one hero thought to himself, watching Izuku run across the mock cityscape. "What's he doing now?" Snipe questioned, and everyone's eyes locked onto the screen showing Izuku. "Let's see if my physical combination works out in a live combat situation." Izuku grinned as he got into a relaxed horse stance before focusing. Physicality boost, efficiency, enhance function, kinetic boost, durability up, force multiplier, force projection, and lactic acid elimination. Izuku suddenly blurred forward, and the cameras had a difficult time keeping up with the teen. A one-pointer suddenly lost its head to a green blur. A three-pointer had a hole in the middle of its chassis, and several important-looking parts were now on the ground next to it. A two-pointer was simply in two pieces suddenly. On and on it went for almost 30 seconds before the blur slowed down, and Izuku was seen leaning against a wall, breathing heavily. "It looks like he's caused himself some damage," Cementos commented as the teachers looked at the teen. "With Izuku." "Shit," Izuku hissed out as his whole body hurt. That combination worked great, but the kickback from pushing his body to such astounding physical feats was a deep, widespread pain throughout his entire body. With a deep breath, Izuku activated Healing Aura, and his body was engulfed in the light green glowed as he healed. "So glad I got this one." He mentally rejoiced as the pain faded away and he was good to go again. Teacher's viewing booth. Did he just heal himself?" Recovery Girl asked as she looked at the teen resume his run through the cityscape. "It would seem so," 13 replied, her distorted voice still managing to come off as shocked. "Nizu, if that young man's ability can be used on others, I want to help train him with it." Recovery Girl informed the principal. If the boy's healing ability could be used on others, she might have finally found a good assistant to help her keep these rambunctious kids from falling apart. We can most definitely inquire." Nizu, the odd, chimera-like principal, replied with a smile, his eyes never leaving the screen following Izuku. "Power Loader, it's about time, and I'm interested to see the examinee's response to your creations." "Yes, sir." Power Loader grinned as he flipped up a plastic cover over a big red button. "Ready or not, kids? Here they come." With that, he pushed the button, and loud rumbling was heard at all of the test sites. Test Site B. Izuku watched from the street as the giant zero-pointer moved its way down the main street of the mock cityscape. No wonder that's just a gimmick. It's ridiculously huge. It would take either a very specific quirk or one capable of truly overwhelming force to stop it. Looking down at the rubble strewn around by the behemoth machine, Izuku caught a glimpse of someone half buried under some hunks of concrete. The biggest problem with this was the zero-pointer's massive tank treads bearing down on them. Izuku was dashing forward without even thinking about it. "Please, a little help. Anybody." A brunette girl cried out as she tried to struggle her way out of the rubble that trapped her. She hadn't expected the gimmick zero-pointer to be so huge that it made buildings crumble just by being near them. "I've got you," a boy's voice called out, and the rubble pinning her was carefully removed. "Can you stand?" "My ankle, I think it's broken," the brunette replied as she turned to look at her helper. He was a nice-looking guy with green hair and eyes, with freckles on his face. In the very back of her mind, a thought filtered through that she didn't pay any attention to. He's kinda cute. I'm getting you out of here, Izuku told her as he picked her up in a princess carry and bolted away from the machine. The brunette suddenly noticed her ankle didn't hurt, and a quick glance revealed a light green glow fading away. Run from here on. I'm going to try and stop it from getting any closer to the other examinees, he yelled as he gently placed the girl on her feet and bolted back towards the zero-pointer. What? Wait. What? The brunette tried to ask Izuku. There aren't any points for beating it. The points don't matter, Izuku yelled back as he ran. If you can do something that'll help others, even if it doesn't benefit you, then a hero should do it. With that, he was out of range, and the girl could only stare at his back as he ran. He's right, she mumbled to herself. So cool. With Izuku. I've only got one chance at this. Izuku breathed in deeply before exhaling. Sharpen, force projection, amplification, physicality boost, efficiency, enhance function, heat generation, temperature fluctuation, force multiplier, kinetic boost, and energy burn. Izuku's arm seemed to gain a blade-like edge. The edge glowed yellow-white with an intense amount of heat, and his body seemed to get slightly bulkier. His arms suddenly tensed as it started to literally vibrate from the amount of energy it was containing. The zero-pointer continued its rumbling forward as its massive treads tore up the street, and the nearby buildings cracked and crumbled as it passed anywhere close. The large machine locked on to a single person directly in its path as it moved forward. The next thing it, or anybody else, saw was a massive yellow-white arc of force and heat blitz through the area and disperse high into the air. The onboard cameras from the zero-pointer recorded the green-haired teen collapsing to the ground, holding his right arm. Then they recorded the ground as the top half of the zero-pointer slid forward off the lower half and collapsed to the ground. Teacher's viewing booth. Did he just cut the zero-pointer in half? Almost every teacher present questioned loudly while Nizu laughed, not entirely sanely, as he watched the zero-pointer cease to function. The area that had been cut still glowed a bright orange from the heat that had cleaved through it. My, this young man is rather impressive, isn't he? Nizu remarked, seeing all of his staff staring wide-eyed at the screen. With Izuku. Too much, way too much. Izuku grit his teeth at the pain he'd just caused his right arm. The limb was swollen and burned from the power Izuku had managed to generate by combining so many quirks together at once. He'd never had a need to test out such a combination before, and now he was suffering the consequences of doing it without any form of practice. The light green glow of healing aura surrounded the limb for a bit, and the burn slowly faded away while the arm slowly returned to its original size as the swelling went away. Oh crap, Izuku managed to utter as he got lightheaded and fell backwards. I used up all of my energy. He was preparing to smack his head on the concrete, but his head fell onto something much softer. Eep, a familiar voice called out. Izuku forced his eyes to open. Looking up into the face of the brunette girl from earlier, Izuku realized his head must be on her thighs. He would have gone red at the thought if he wasn't so tired. Sorry, Izuku muttered out softly as he felt his eyes getting heavy. And no problem. The brunette stuttered out. Thanks for saving me earlier. No problem. Izuku managed to get out. My name's Uraraka Ochako. Thank you for helping me. Ochako smiled, her cheeks very red. Midoriya, Izuku, you're welcome. Izuku replied as he closed his eyes and drifted off. Thanks again, Midoriya-kun. Ochako smiled softly as she let him rest. Most of the other examinees still hadn't rebooted from the display Izuku had done. And stop. Present Mick's voice was heard throughout the testing grounds. The exam is over. Ochako barely paid any attention to the loud announcement though, her eyes not leaving Izuku's sleeping face. Cute, Ochako thought, only for her mind to catch up with her a second later and make her face go fully red. 1 week later, Midoriya home. Izuku, it's here, son. Hisashi exclaimed as he charged up the stairs towards his son's room with the letter addressed to the teen. It was from UA and in Hisashi's mind contained his son's acceptance letter. Thanks, Dad. Izuku thanked his father before taking the letter and heading downstairs. Let's open it together in the living room. The duo made their way downstairs and Inko was quick to join them. "Here it goes," he said as he opened the letter, and out came a metallic disc. Hmm. Hisashi looked at the disc before it lit up and a hologram appeared in their living room. "Hello, Midoriya, Izuku. I'm Nizu, the principal of UA High School." Nizu introduced himself. "I'm happy to inform you that you passed the written exam with a very respectable 97%. As for your practical exam score, please look behind me." The Chimera pointed to an electronic board that turned on showing Izuku's picture and score. Practical exam score. Izuku Midoriya. Villain points, 100. Rescue points, 75. Total, 175 points. Practical exam score. As you can see, you performed very well. The new record holder for highest score, in fact. Nizu congratulated with a smile on his face. "I'm pleased to welcome you to UA High School, Midoriya-san. This will be your hero academia." "That's my boy." Hisashi cheered as he ruffled his son's hair. "My baby boy." Inko happy cried as she hugged her son for all she was worth. "Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. I'm so relieved." Izuku smiled while exhaling a sigh of relief. Even though he'd reasoned that he'd passed, it was completely different actually getting the confirmation. Also record holder for highest score? Holy crap, yes. This is just the start though. Izuku thought to himself as he hugged his mother back while his father was planning a celebration. "I'll keep going, keep helping people, and eventually be the best hero I can." Thus began the tale of the great hero known as Synthesis. Chapter 2, First Day at UA. 1A, 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 there it is. Izuku smiled at finally finding his classroom. UA was a massive school, and he'd almost gotten lost. A helpful upperclassman had kindly pointed out the way for him and given him a thumbs up before leaving. Standing before the door, Izuku took a deep breath and exhaled before opening the door and stepping into the room. "Take your feet off that desk, immediately," a blue-haired teen demanded as he chopped the air. "It's an insult not only to the people that made it, but also to our seniors who studied here before us." "You're kidding me, right?" Bakugo sneered back at the other teen. "Did your old school put a stick up your ass? Or were you born with it?" "Of course, why wouldn't we be in the same class?" Izuku sighed in defeat. Did the universe have it out for him, or something? "It's him, the record holder." The blue-haired teen spoke as he noticed Izuku standing in the doorway. "TCH. Bakugo scowled at Izuku from across the classroom. All of the other students in the classroom, the majority based on the fact that only a few seats were empty, looked towards him at the same time. Hi. Izuku greeted the class as a whole. He wasn't used to having so much attention on him all at once. "Good morning, my name is Ida Tenya, from Semi-Private Academy." Ida introduced himself to Izuku. "I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you." Izuku returned the greeting. "I was very impressed by your record-breaking achievement at the entrance exams, Midoriya," Ida stated, and Izuku felt his cheeks redden slightly. "Oh, thank you." Izuku replied nervously. He needed to get it together, or he was going to look like a fool in front of his new classmates. He heard some comments from his new classmates when they heard Ida's mentioning of his record-breaking. "So he's the guy that scored even more than All Might?" A red-haired boy said to a blonde guy with a black, lightning bolt-like streak in his hair. "No way, are you for real?" The blonde replied, looking between Izuku and the redhead. "I heard the old record was like 140 or something," a purplet girl mentioned as she looked over at Izuku. "I saw the list for the entrance exam. He got 175 on it." Karo, a verdette girl with long hair and large eyes, commented. "That's crazy." A short boy with purple balls on his head piped up. "Damn, Deku." Bakugo growled from his seat, still glaring at Izuku. "Hey, I recognize that messy hair. Midoriya, how are you?" A familiar female voice spoke up from behind Izuku. Turning around, Izuku was greeted with the sight of Uraraka Ochako in the UA student uniform. "She looks really cute in the uniform." Izuku thought to himself before he spoke. "Good morning, Uraraka-san. It's nice to see you again." Ochako smiled at him in return. "What do you think we're doing today, besides orientation?" Ochako asked with a smile. The girl had a bright and bubbly personality, and Izuku found himself a mixture of flustered and enamored by it. "I wonder what our teachers are like. I'm so excited to meet everybody." If you're just here to make friends, you can pack up your stuff and leave. A male voice came from behind the brunette. Turning to look, the duo found a man in a yellow sleeping bag lying on the floor. Neither was quite sure what to make of this new occurrence, though. Who is this guy? Izuku wondered as he looked at the scruffy face poking out of the sleeping bag. Welcome to UA's hero course. The man spoke as he stood up and unzipped the sleeping bag. It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down. That's too long. Time is precious. Rational students would understand that. Hey, wait up. A female voice called out as a girl ran up to the 1A classroom door. Sorry, I know I'm almost late. I somehow got sent towards the 1B classroom instead of 1A. My bad, my bad. The girl spoke up as she rubbed the back of her head. She had fawn-colored hair and warm dark brown eyes. She also filled out the UA uniform very well. Izuku realized what he'd just thought and felt his cheeks heat up a bit. Don't let it happen again. The scruffy man spoke up. Sure thing. Psyched to be here. The girl replied with a bright smile. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota. Aizawa informed the class. All of the students blinked in shock at the information. Right, let's get to it. Put these on and head outside. He pulled out a gym uniform from the sleeping bag and showed it to the class. Huh, rang out through the classroom. In only a few minutes, the class of 20 found themselves on a practice field. Thankfully, UA had some pretty good sign markers to lead students to locker rooms and practice fields. So this time, no one got lost on the way there. A quirk assessment test? All the students questioned when they heard what they'd be doing. But what about orientation? We're going to miss it. Ochako spoke up. If you want to be a pro, you don't have time for pointless ceremonies. Aizawa replied. Here at UA, we're not tethered to traditions. That means we get to run our classes however we see fit. With a quiet exhale, Aizawa held up a phone-like device. You've been taking standardized athletics tests your entire school lives, but you've never been allowed to use your quirks. The Ministry of Education is still trying to pretend we're all created equal and not letting those with the most power excel. It's not rational. One day they'll learn. With a shake of his head, Aizawa focused on Izuku. Midoriya, you broke the record on the entrance exam. What was your best throw on the softball pitch in junior high? 63 meters, sir. Izuku replied. Right, try doing it with your quirk. Aizawa instructed and pointed to a circle on the ground. Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle. All right. Izuku looked at the ball in his hand. It was equal in both size and weight to a softball, but with a metallic black ring around the middle. What would be the best combination for a distance throw? He thought to himself as he rapidly went over the list of quirks he had in his head. Yeah, that one, and that one. Add that one too, with these as well. That should do it. Izuku mused before he held the palm in his hand and extended his arm at a 45-degree angle. Air compression, amplification, enhance function, kinetic boost, force multiplier, and force projection. What's he waiting for? A pink-skinned girl asked as Izuku stood in place for a few seconds. Powering up, I think. Ochako replied, making the pink girl tilt her head in confusion. A large blast of air sent the ball rocketing into the sky. The strong wind this kicked up almost staggered some of the students. Bakugo grit his teeth at seeing the force Izuku had unleashed while all of the other teens were impressed. The wind died down a second later, and Izuku looked towards Aizawa for further instructions. The teacher was looking down at the device in his hands, as if waiting for something. All of you need to know your maximum capabilities, Aizawa stated as he turned to face the class as a whole. It's the most rational way to figure out your potential as a pro hero. He held up the device in his hands so that the students could see it. On the screen was Izuku's result of 1 for 10.3 m. Izuku heard all of his classmates gasp at the distance. Whoa, 1,400 meters, are you kidding me? The boy with the blonde, lightning bolt-streaked hair exclaimed. Was that an air cannon quirk? A large boy with gray hair and a face mask questioned. Huh, at the exam it was a super hot cutting force. Ochako remembered. Maybe he can alter the temperature and other properties? I want to go, this looks fun. The pink girl clapped her hands together. This is what I'm talking about. Getting to use our quirks as much as we want. A black-haired boy cheered. So, this looks fun, huh? Aizawa questioned, quickly silencing the students. You have 3 years at UA to become a hero. Do you all think it's going to be all games and playtime? Seeing none of the students replying, Aizawa continued. Fools, today you'll engage in 8 physical tests to gauge your potential. Whoever comes in last will be deemed to have none and will be expelled immediately. That got a round of gasps from all of the students. Immediate expulsion for coming in the lowest on 8 tests. Izuku thought in shock at Aizawa's words. As I said, we get to decide how our classes are run. If that's going to be a problem, you can head home right now, Aizawa stated as he pushed his long hair up out of his eyes and stared at his students. Now let the games begin. First test, 50-meter dash. Izuku watched as Ida and the girl with frog-like features took their places at the starting line. He was interested in seeing how his classmates did and what all of their quirks were, though he could tell at a glance that both Ida and the girl had mutant-type quirks. Their times were impressive, though. Ida clocked in at just over 3 seconds and the girl at about 5.5 seconds. Watching his classmates run, and in some cases, use their quirks in interesting ways to complete the 50 meters, really made Izuku wish he had his notebook right now. Ochako finished in just over 7 seconds and seemed pleased with her result. The fawn-haired girl and the pink girl both finished at just over 5 seconds. Though the pink girl appeared to be skating on some kind of substance coming from her feet, which Izuku thought was a good way to complete the test. Finally, it was Izuku's turn, and the universe seemed to still be messing with him since he was paired with Bakugo. Force projection, kinetic boost, physicality boost, enhance function, efficiency, force multiplier, amplification. Izuku combined the quirks and compiled their effects as he took his position. When the go was given, Izuku launched off the blocks so powerfully they shattered. He clocked in just behind Ida at 3.3 seconds. Bakugo was snarling when he came in at 4.3 seconds while using his explosions as thrusters. Damn cheating, Deku! Bakugo yelled loudly as he stomped past Izuku. Cheating? A black-haired boy with odd elbows questioned. How'd he cheat? The fawn-haired girl questioned, her head tilted in confusion. Bakugo-san appears to be a sore loser. A tall ravenet girl with a rather voluptuous figure commented, looking at Bakugo with distaste. Agreed, I saw no means of cheating. Ida nodded as he looked between Izuku and Bakugo. Oh, shut up. You all don't even know how useless Deku is without other people to leech off of, Bakugo retorted with a snarl. That brought up confused looks from everyone, and Aizawa sighed at having to stop the tests. Midoriya, as your teacher, I've already received your information from your junior high. If you don't mind, please clear up this situation by explaining your quirk. Aizawa sighed. Izuku exhaled, and his eyes dimmed a bit at having to reveal his quirk so soon. But he didn't want anyone to get the wrong impression of him by listening to Bakugo. All right, sir. Izuku agreed before he turned to face his classmates. My quirk is a mutant type. It's called Collector. He saw several of his classmates mumble the name, and looks of confusion spread across their faces. My quirk allows me to permanently copy the quirks of others through a small sample of their blood. There it was, Izuku lamented, the shock and unease in his classmates' eyes. He was really hoping he'd be able to make a friend or two before he was forced to reveal his quirk to everyone. Just as he was about to resign himself to being an outcast again, someone spoke up in his defense, sort of. Any quirk? Any at all? Ochako asked curiously, and Izuku almost felt like crying from relief when he didn't see any fear or unease in Ochako's eyes. No, not all. Izuku shook his head. I can't copy other mutant-type quirks, and transformation-type quirks only express about half of their full capabilities when I copy them. I can copy emitter types at full power, but I have to work out how to use them myself. Any drawbacks of using the quirks I copy also apply to me as well. I can use multiple quirks in synchronicity to achieve new or more powerful effects as well, but using too many or generating too much force can lead to injury. Izuku almost sank to the floor in unbelieving joy when he saw the faces and eyes of his classmates go from fear and unease to looks of curiosity and interest. That's like totes amazing, the fawn-haired girl exclaimed, her eyes wide and a smile on her face. It's a very interesting quirk. The ravenet girl nodded, looking at Izuku curiously. That's wild, a red-haired boy yelled out as he held up his fists excitedly. As interesting as Midoriya's quirk is, we have tests to finish. Aizawa spoke up, and all of the students snapped to attention. Izuku watched on, trying to commit Quirks to memory for his notebook, as the rest of the class finished up their 50-meter dashes. When it came to the grip strength test, Shoji Mizo blew everyone else out of the water with an insane 540-kilogram squeeze. Izuku had mixed physicality boost, force multiplier, amplification, and enhance function together to get an impressive 250-kilogram reading. Momo was easily the most impressive, score-wise, as she created what seemed to be a miniature hydraulic clamp, and it eventually maxed out the dynamometer. The seated toe touch test had been challenging for Izuku. While he was flexible and could get a good score, he didn't have a transformation quirk that would let him extend his arms past their natural limits. Something to look into for the future, maybe? The standing long jump was cleared with the same combination of quirks as the 50-meter dash. Izuku had simply changed the direction he'd applied the force and launched himself clear over the sandbox, multiple times the length of the box to be accurate. The repeated side steps were easy enough. Physicality boost, enhance function, efficiency, and lactic acid elimination saw Izuku securing second place, only beaten out by the short boy with the ball-like hair. The boy bounced between two cushions of his quirk at such speed that no one could keep up. The sit-ups test was also conquered with the same 4 quirks as the side steps. Only in this test Izuku took first, as everyone else lost out to their physiology and the buildup of lactic acid in their abdominal muscles. With the lactic acid elimination quirk, Izuku's body was able to bleed away the acid before it could build up and cause the painful burning it did in others. In the endurance running test, Izuku and Ida eventually tied. Izuku could keep going with his 4 enhancement quirks, carrying him through the test. Aizawa had actually just told them to stop after they'd gone on for so long that they were cutting into the class's time to finish the last test. As Izuku had already done the softball pitch test, he didn't have to go again. Instead, he was able to watch as his classmates came up with their own methods of getting farther throws, if their quirks were applicable to the test, of course. Bakugo raged when he'd only gotten about half of Izuku's distance and stewed in his rage off to the side of the rest of the class. Izuku was very impressed when Momo had created a functioning cannon of all things and fired the ball out of it. Her score of 3 kilometers and change was well earned in his opinion. Ochako left every student's jaw on the floor when she'd removed the effects of gravity from the ball and seemingly thrown it into orbit. Her reading came out as infinity, but Aizawa would only mark it as 1 meter further than Momo's score. I'm just going to bring up the whole list. It's not worth going over each individual score. Aizawa informed the class as he clicked the device in his hand. A hologram appeared and listed off their names from 1st to 20th place. Izuku stared for a second, not quite sure if he could believe it, when he saw his name sitting just below Momo's. The fact that Momo had taken 1st place meant that Izuku was 2nd. Reading through the whole list, Izuku tried to match names to faces so he could start identifying his classmates. Quirk assessment ranks. Yaoyorozu Momo. Midoriya Izuku. Todoroki Shoto. Bakugo Katsuki. Ida Tenya. Tokoyami Fumikichi. Shoji Mizo. Utsushimi Kami. Kirishima Ijiro. Ashido Mina. Yurariko Ochako. Kodakoji. Sato Rikido. Azuitsu. Aoyama Yuga. Shiro Hanta. Kaminari Denki. Jiro Kyuka. Hagakure Toru. Mineta Minoru. Quirk assessment ranks. No. The short guy with the purple balls for hair screamed as he looked at the list. I can't be expelled. How will I get popular with girls and touch their bodies now? Needless to say, this was met with less than pleasant reactions from the girls of the class. Degenerate. Momo huffed, looking away from the wailing boy. You're gross. Kyuka glared at the panicking Mineta. That's not very heroic. Suyu admonished with a shake of her head. Keep dreaming. Kami dismissed the boy. Pervert. Mina turned away from Mineta. That's so wrong. Toru backed away from the boy. Is that why you're here? Ochako looked creeped out as she moved closer to Izuku. Also, I lied about expelling the person in last place. Aizawa informed them with a wave of his hand. It was a logical ruse to make you all try your hardest. I'm saved. Mineta cheered only to be wrapped up in Aizawa's scarves and dragged in front of the teacher. Aizawa's eyes glowed red with his quirk as he held Mineta off the ground at eye level. That being said, if you don't improve your behavior, you'll be out of here before you know it, Aizawa informed the, once again, panicking boy. Just because you're not going home today doesn't mean you aren't the first one on the chopping block. Do you understand? Mineta nodded rapidly before being released by Aizawa's scarves and dropping to the ground. Anyway, your papers for the school and the beginning of the semester are on your desks. Make sure you pick them up and read them by tomorrow. Dismissed. The class all breathed out and began to make their way towards the locker rooms to change out of their gym uniforms. Aizawa was walking back towards the teacher's lounge when he ran into All Might just as he turned the corner of the building. The underground hero wasn't surprised, though. He'd noticed the large man peeking around the corner for most of the tests. Something you need, All Might? Aizawa questioned the new teacher. I was merely curious as to whether you'd expel the entire class or not. All Might replied, and with a single look he could tell Aizawa didn't believe him. Whatever. If you have nothing to say, I'll be going. Aizawa walked past the large man. Aizawa, did you notice anything odd about young Midoriya? All Might asked. Nothing that wasn't covered by the information from his previous school. Is there something I need to be aware of? Aizawa questioned the number one hero. I'll have to do some digging before I can be sure, but it may be for the best to keep a close eye on young Midoriya for a while. All Might said. Aizawa merely shrugged in response. I keep watch over all of my students, Aizawa stated before walking away. Could it be possible? All Might wondered to himself as he thought about the green-haired teen. Could he have a child or a descendant? Girls' locker room. Totally didn't expect this the first day, am I right? Cammy asked the other girls as they all changed back into their school uniforms. Not a bit, Mina replied with a smile. It was unexpected, Momo admitted. I wonder if everything we missed in orientation is covered in the papers Aizawa told us to pick up and read. Ochako wondered. I'm still surprised about Midoriya-chan's quirk, to be honest. Siyu commented with a cute croak at the end. Right? It's super crazy, Toru exclaimed. I've never heard of anything like it. Kyuka shook her head. I think it's interesting, Ochako replied. She still remembered being saved by Izuku at the exam. Speaking of guys, we have some hot ones in our class. Cammy laughed, and Mina joined her. Momo, Kyuka, and Ochako blushed at the topic while Toru giggled and Siyu looked mildly interested. Right? Who are you looking at, Cammy-chan? Mina questioned with a grin. The fawn-haired girl smiled teasingly as she looked at the other girls. While Todoroki is handsome, and Kirishima and Kaminari have some good looks, but that Midoriya is pure fire. Cammy tapped her full, pouty lips with the tip of her index finger. I wouldn't mind getting his number. See, Cammy-san, Izaya sent that a bit fast. Ochako stuttered out with red cheeks. It does seem rather forward. Momo blushed as she finished with her tie. I think you should go for it. Mina cheered with a bright smile. Go get him, Cammy-chan. Toru giggled as she put on her shoes. Can we please talk about something else? Kyuka requested as she closed the locker and revealed her blushing face. We should be hurrying. We need to get our papers and stuff from class still. Siyu commented as she headed for the door, already changed. What? No way. I want to keep talking about boys and romance. Mina playfully whined as she followed after the frog-like girl. I'm sure there will be time for such things later. Momo spoke as the girls exited the locker room. For now, we should focus on the work we have ahead of us. All right, we'll save it for girl talk later. Mina smiled widely. I'm in, Toru exclaimed as she fell into step with Mina. Count me in too. Always fun to dish about cute guys. Cammy grinned as the girls walked back towards their classroom. I'm not well versed in such things, Momo admitted with her cheeks pink. We'll get you there, Yamamo. Mina grinned at the Ravenet. Yamamo? Momo questioned as she raised her hands to her cheeks cutely. This is going to be a regular thing, isn't it? Kyuka sighed as she walked beside the taller girl. It seems like it. Ochako rubbed the back of her head, mildly embarrassed about the boy talk. This is, going to be a fun year. I'm already psyched. Cammy smiled as the girls made it to the classroom to collect their stuff. Izuku had no idea that he was already starting to attract some attention from a few of his female classmates. But the year had just begun and UA was already proving to be a challenging school. He would have to make sure to be ready for whatever the hero course could throw at him. Further down from Izuku, Bakugo was glaring at the verdette as he constantly thought about his placement in the rankings. Fourth place was unacceptable. Hell, second was already bad, but fourth? The fact that Deku beat him only made it even more infuriating. The damn leech. He'd show that loser who the better hero was the first chance he got. Neither boy knew that said chance was already fast approaching. Chapter 3. Hero Training, Battle Trials. So normal. Izuku thought as he sat in his morning classes at UA. After yesterday's sudden quirk assessment test, Izuku was wondering if all of the hero course classes would be like that. But, it would seem, that was not the case. All morning class 1A had been doing normal school subjects. Math, English, history, art, classical Japanese, all subjects that could be found in any Japanese high school. It all just seemed so normal. Oh wow, I can't believe I get to eat lunch rush's food. Izuku held himself back from fanboying entirely, though it was a close thing, as he walked away from the lunch line. The pro hero, Lunch Rush, was a disaster relief hero. A type of support hero that made food for people displaced by natural disasters or powerful villain incidents. The pro's quirk let him cook high-quality food with the same speed and efficiency of a team of 30 chefs. UA saved quite a few paychecks by only having a few other cafeteria staff needed to keep the place clean. Midoriya, over here. Ochako called out as she waved from where she was sitting. Izuku smiled, even as he tried not to fidget nervously while he walked towards the table. The food here is great, right? The brunette beamed at him as she held her rice bowl up. I'm really excited to try Lunch Rush's food. Izuku agreed as he sat down. Looking around, the table revealed Ida, Yaoyorozu, Utsushimi, Azui, Jiro, and Rikido sitting with them. It's good stuff. Rikido nodded to him with a smile. I'm surprised this doesn't cost extra. It is very good. Yaoyorozu smiled as she enjoyed her lunch. Totes the best. Kami grinned, her hand on her cheek as she ate. As expected of a pro like Lunch Rush. Ida nodded as he took a sip of his drink. So good. Izuku sighed as he took his first bite of the katsudon he'd picked. He'd been so excited to see his favorite food offered. It wasn't as good as his mom's, in his opinion, but it was still great. What do you guys think afternoon heroics class will be like? Jiro questioned a few moments later. Probably just some introductions and basics. That makes the most sense. Azui replied as she looked towards the purplet. That does sound reasonable. Yaoyorozu nodded in agreement. This is UA though. Izuku spoke up. If the heroics teacher is anything like Aizawa then. He trailed off, and everyone's faces took on a thoughtful or worried expression. So, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Rikido shrugged with a half-smile. That might be for the best. Ida nodded while looking contemplative. I hope we won't be threatened with expulsion again. Ochako murmured worriedly, nibbling on her rice. No worries, fam, we got this. Kami spoke up brightly. The girl was clearly trying to break the tense mood. We'll do our best. Jiro nodded as she exhaled heavily. Heroics class. I am here. The familiar voice called out, and Izuku had to grab his desk to stop from leaping up to his feet. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might exclaimed as he opened the door and struck a hero pose, his cape fluttering in a slight breeze. No way, Kaminari exclaimed with a huge grin. All Might is our teacher, Kirishima yelled excitedly. It's All Might. It's really him. Izuku was practically vibrating in his chair at seeing his idol up close. Welcome to Heroics Basic Training. Think of this class as Hero 101. All Might smiled his trademark smile at the class. Today we'll be getting right into the thick of things with this. He proclaimed as he pulled out a card with the word battle printed on it in big, bright red letters. Battle. Bakugo grinned viciously as he stared at the card. Yes, a battle trial. All Might grinned. But if you're going to train to be heroes, you need to look the part. With that, he pressed a button on a small remote he had. From the wall emerged 20 metal cases, each marked with a number corresponding to each student's seat. For that, you'll need these. Costumes. The entire class exclaimed with a cheer. Exactly. All Might smiled. Get changed and meet me at Ground Beta. This is so awesome. Kirishima cheered loudly. Izuku couldn't help but to agree with his red-haired classmate. Ground Beta. They say the clothing makes the man. All Might intoned as he watched the students start to emerge from the locker rooms. As of this moment, you all are heroes. The class all trotted out in their hero costumes, some commenting on others' suits while some maintained a quiet, focused attitude. Izuku emerged with the suit he and his parents had come up with together. A forest green bodysuit, with reinforced protection for his chest, back, arms, and legs. The armor of the suit was Kevlar, along with polycarbon plates that were lightweight, but also strong enough to stop small arms and rifle fire. He had a bright red utility belt with multiple pouches on, and his favorite red shoes were covered with metal plates to reinforce them too. Over his lower face, he had a solid metal guard that also had a functioning rebreather system in case of gas attacks. He'd considered having some kind of mask or helmet, plus a cape at one point, but his parents had questioned the idea. In his mother's words, "Why would you hide your eyes? They'll make people feel calm and safe." He'd teared up at that, which had led to a family hug fest. Whoa, Midoriya, your costume looks so cool. Ochako smiled brightly as she came up to him. I should have been a bit more specific with mine. The brunette nervously rubbed her head. I was thinking more spacesuit, but it ended up being skin tight. Izuku had almost stopped functioning when he'd seen Ochako's costume. The suit left little of the girl's figure to the imagination, and Izuku felt his entire face get hot. No way, Chako-chan. You look great. Kami smiled as she came up beside the brunette. The fawn-haired girl smiled widely as she stood next to Ochako in a black catsuit that was unzipped just enough to show some of her cleavage. She also had a metal ring around her neck to protect it and had a black hat that resembled a policeman's on her head. The only problem was that her suit also left almost nothing to the imagination, and Izuku was sure his head was emitting steam by now. I think both of your costumes look great. Izuku smiled, barely able to keep himself from stuttering. Thanks. Kami replied with a grin as she obviously looked him up and down. Thank you, Midoriya. Ochako smiled even as her cheeks heated up. Can I ask about the hat, Utsushimi? Izuku questioned as he pointed at the hat on her head. This? Kami asked as she gripped the small brim with her right index finger and thumb. It's to pay homage to my family. Both my dad and my grandpa are in the police force. It's also similar to the Shiketsu hats. That was my second choice high school if I didn't make it into UA. I see. That's a cool way to keep your family close, Utsushimi. Izuku smiled at the fawn-haired girl. Thanks, fam. Kami smiled back. But you can just call me Kami if you want to. Izuku lost his battle with his nerves at Utsushimi, Kami, allowing him to use her first name so soon after meeting each other. Alright, you bunch of newbies. Let's get started. All Might called out, and the class gathered around the number one hero. Today we'll be performing battle trials in teams of 2. The simulated scenario is that 2 villains are hiding a nuclear weapon inside of the building. The heroes have 15 minutes to find and subdue the villains or secure the weapon. How will teams be chosen? Ida asked quickly. Are there any other conditions for victory? Yaoyorozu inquired next. Can I just blow them up? Bakugo demanded as he glared out of the corner of his eye at Izuku. Hold on. All Might raised his hands towards the students. My quirk isn't super hearing. The number one hero then proceeded to pull out 2 boxes from off to the side. We'll be determining teams through lots. Is that really the best way? Ida wondered, and Izuku spoke up before All Might could answer. It's actually fairly realistic, Ida. Izuku got everyone's attention without meaning to, but continued anyway. In the field, pros often have to team up suddenly to deal with villains or disasters, even if they don't know each other or what the other hero's quirk is. I see. You make a good point, Midoriya. Ida nodded before turning back to All Might. Please continue, sir. Right. All Might's sweat dropped. As for conditions of victory, the heroes win if they can touch the weapon or if they can wrap this capture tape around the villains. The villains win by maintaining control of the weapon or using their own capture tape on the heroes. The large blonde man informed as he showed the class the capture tape. Do know that this is still a training exercise. If I say the match is over, it is over. Any use of force that could severely injure or potentially kill another student will be an immediate disqualification and a disciplinary write-up. If you get 2 of those in a single school year, it is grounds for removal from the hero course. 3 will see you expelled from UA altogether, so follow instructions. With that, let's choose teams. All Might held up the first box and called for the first student, Aoyama Yuga, to pick a lot. Izuku carefully kept track of which of his classmates paired up on the teams while he waited for his turn. When he was called, he pulled out a lot with the letter O on it. Looking around, he noticed that Azui was looking at him with the other a lot in her hand. With a smile, he walked over to his partner. "Looks like we're partners, Azui." Izuku greeted the frog quirk user. "Glad to be working with you, Midoriya, and call me Tsu." Azui, Tsu requested. "Oh, all right, Tsu." Izuku stuttered a bit at another girl wanting him to use her first name so soon after meeting. A shortened version of her first name at that. "Should we discuss some strategy?" Tsu asked, and Izuku lightly shook his head to clear his thoughts. "Once we find out who we'll be up against, that would be great." Izuku nodded to the other verdette. It wasn't long before the teams were made, and Izuku looked the groups over quickly. The teams were Tsu and Izuku as Team A, Todoroki and Shoji as Team B, Yaoyorozu and Mineta as Team C, Bakugo and Ida as Team D, Aoyama and Ishido as Team E, Rikido and Koda as Team F, Kaminari and Jiro as Team G, Tokoyami and Ochako as Team H, Kami and Hagakure as Team I, and lastly Kirishima and Siro made up Team J. Now for the first battle trial, it will be Team D as the villains versus Team A as the heroes. All Might announced as he drew the 2 teams from 2 different boxes, one black and the other off-white. Of course, Izuku sighed as he glanced over and saw Bakugo grinning maliciously at him with a glare. "He seems to have a problem with you," Tsu mentioned as she saw the ash-blonde glare at her fellow verdette. "Do you 2 know each other?" "Since we were children." Izuku nodded as the 2 groups made their way to the building they would use for the trial. Bakugo became a bully after his explosion quirk manifested. It didn't help that he was always rather advanced and was constantly showered with nothing but praise from everyone. He developed the mentality that everyone wasn't as good as him from it all, and since my quirk didn't manifest in a visible way, well, I became a target for his ridicule. "That's not very heroic." Tsu shook her head at the ash blonde's attitude. "Not really, huh?" Izuku half smiled at her. "So we have a couple of minutes to strategize, though since we're up against Bakugo, I already have a bit of a plan." I guess we should talk about how we're going to enter the building." Tsu looked over the blueprint of the multi-story building. "I should probably tell you about my quirk too. Mutant type, a frog form quirk, grants you physiology similar to a frog and lets you use the abilities of said amphibians. You can extend your tongue, potentially prehensile, stick to surfaces, and you can also leap long distances and probably have very strong kicks." Izuku rattled off, and Tsu's eyes actually widened at the breakdown of her quirk. "Midoriya-chan, how did you know that?" Tsu questioned her teammate curiously. "Sorry." Izuku apologized as he rubbed the back of his head. "It's kind of a side ability of my collector quirk. I'm really good at analyzing quirks and figuring them out. Since mutant types are always active, it gives me a lot of time to analyze them. With the quirk assessment yesterday, I had plenty of opportunities to see your quirk in action too, which helps my analysis." "That's impressive." Tsu smiled at him, a cute croak following her words. "Oh, I can tell you something else too," Izuku offered. "What's that?" Tsu questioned with her head tilted to one side slightly. Izuku thought it made her look cute. "Your quirk isn't finished. You can still go further and unlock more abilities," Izuku told her, and Tsu blinked at him. "What?" Tsu asked for clarification while still being a bit stunned. "Your quirk, it can still evolve further. I don't know what abilities you might develop, but your quirk potential hasn't been reached yet," Izuku explained, and Tsu croaked absently for several seconds. "Is this another part of your quirk?" Tsu inquired, still a bit shocked that her quirk had more room to grow and develop. "Yeah, I'm not sure why, but once I analyze a quirk for a bit, I can tell if its potential is reached or not. Neither of my parents have very strong quirks overall. Both of their quirk potentials are fully realized, though. That means neither of them can make their quirks any stronger, even with training. Izuku clarified for the frog girl. So I guess I need to keep training then? Tsuyu asked. Yeah, mutant types grow the fastest when pushed to their physical limits. Transformation types have to push beyond what they're currently capable of with their transformation, sort of like transforming while already transformed, I guess. Emitters have to force their quirk past the point where it naturally kicks back. That's the only way their abilities get stronger, though, to overuse the ability until it becomes easy to go past the old limit. Izuku clarified, and Tsuyu just nodded in surprise at her teammates' knowledge of quirks. So, we should probably strategize now. We only have a minute left now. Tsuyu pointed out, and Izuku apologized for wasting time. It's fine, Midoriya-chan. You said you already had a bit of a plan because of Bakugo, right? Right. Well, Bakugo is going to come at me full force, and almost guaranteed to be alone. So I'll enter from the front to draw his attention. While he's engaging me, most likely ignoring Ida entirely, you could scale the walls outside and locate the weapon. Since all we need to do is touch it, your tongue should count. Izuku laid out his plan. My tongue can stretch to a maximum of 20 meters, and it's pretty fast. Tsuyu nodded as she considered Izuku's plan. There are a lot of windows to check, though. Should I start on the ground floor and work my way up, or start at the top and work downwards? Top to bottom, neither Ida nor Bakugo would leave the weapon on the ground floor. They want to keep it far enough away that we'd have to come get it by going up the stairs. Izuku reasoned, and Tsuyu nodded at the logic. Begin. All Might's voice came in through their earbud radios. Stay safe, Midoriya-chan. Tsuyu nodded to him as she leapt upwards and landed at the 3rd floor. She stuck to the wall and proceeded to climb towards the 5th floor to start checking for the weapon. Izuku exhaled. He'd kept it together well enough while they'd been talking and strategizing, but Tsuyu's costume was just as skin-tight as Ochako's. So much of her body was defined by the tight material that Izuku needed a few seconds to calm down. Focus, Izuku. You need to focus. Izuku took a deep breath and then exhaled before entering the building. It was time to face his former friend turned bully. Walking straight for the stairs, Izuku climbed to the 2nd floor and proceeded to check each of the rooms he passed. As he got to the first corner of the floor, Bakugo launched himself around it, a few meters in the air, and let out a vicious snarl. Deku! Bakugo roared as he came down on the verdette with an explosion in hand. Izuku jumped backwards and the ash blonde blasted the wall next to where he'd been standing. Yeah, this is exactly what I thought would happen. Izuku breathed out as he rapidly activated and compiled a few quirks together. Physicality boost, enhance function, durability up, efficiency, kinetic boost, force multiplier. I won't hurt you so bad that they have to stop the exercise, but just under that. Bakugo threatened as he launched himself at Izuku. The verdette's green eyes followed Bakugo's movements, and with a mental nod, he stepped into Bakugo's guard. Once close enough, he grabbed Bakugo's large grenade gauntlet and used a shoulder throw to slam the explosion user into the concrete, back first. Bakugo hacked as the wind was knocked out of him, and Izuku shifted his hold from the support item to Bakugo's upper arm. Quirk nullification was used, and Izuku, with his quirk-enhanced strength, easily manhandled the struggling Bakugo. Within only 30 seconds of the encounter starting, Izuku had subdued and wrapped his capture tape around the red-eyed boy. Bakugo is eliminated. All Might called over the radios, and the ash blonde stilled. Izuku let Bakugo go and stood up. The verdette turned from the ash blonde and started walking towards the stairs. If Bakugo was willing to fight on this floor, that meant that the weapon wasn't on the 2nd floor at all. Damn it, Deku. You coward. Fight me. Bakugo yelled at the back of the retreating teen. Izuku sighed as he turned back to face the enraged blonde. You always start with a big right, Bakugo. Izuku informed the pissed-off explosion user. I know that and exploited it to subdue and eliminate you. You cheap fuck. You're just scared to fight me. Bakugo roared at him. Being a hero isn't about beating up villains, Bakugo. Izuku shook his head. It's about protecting the innocent, saving victims, and then subduing villains. You could be such an amazing hero if you had your priorities straight. With his piece, said Izuku turned the corner and headed for the stairs. Bakugo, leave the building. You've been eliminated. All Might instructed clearly, and Bakugo grit his teeth as he stormed out of the building. Izuku had just gotten to the third floor when he heard Tsu over the radio. Midoriya-chan, I found the weapon. It's on the fourth floor, third room from the stairwell. Tsu informed him. Great work, can you get it? Izuku inquired as he rushed up the stairs to the fourth floor. It would be easier with a distraction, Tsu replied, and Izuku grinned. I can be distracting. Izuku informed his partner as he walked towards the third door that Tsu had told him was where the bomb was. Since he still had his boosting quirks active, Izuku raised his right foot and kicked the door. The enhanced strength granted by his compiled quirks knocked the door clean off its hinges, and Ida instantly focused on him. You've done well, hero, Ida called out in a very over-the-top, evil voice. But you will not be stopping my nefarious plans today. You're right, I'm not. Izuku agreed, and even with his helmet on, Izuku swore he could see the confusion on his classmate's face. What? Ida questioned, confused. She is. Izuku inclined his head behind Ida, just as All Might's voice came over the radios. Weapon secured. Heroes win. All Might announced, and Ida turned to see Tsu's tongue touching the papier-mâché bomb, while the frog girl stuck to the wall outside. She'd only had to open the window while Ida was distracted to complete her part of the plan. No, Ida cried out in shock at his inability to protect the mock weapon. That was a great plan, Midoriya-chan. Tsu smiled at her partner. You did amazingly, Tsu. Izuku smiled back, not even realizing that he hadn't stuttered over the friendly name. Good job, Ida. If Bakugo wasn't so uncooperative, I'm sure you would have done even better. Thank you, Midoriya, but I'm not so sure. Ida replied as the trio walked down the stairs to exit the building. Your plan was ingenious and made great use of both of your quirks. Izuku and Tsu accepted the stiff teen's praise and entered the observation room to see All Might and the rest of their classmates. Now let's go over the results. All Might declared as he looked over the class. Who can tell me the MVP of this trial? Sir, I can tell you. Yaoyorozu raised her hand in the air. With a nod from All Might, the Ravenet continued. The MVP of this trial was Midoriya. He quickly determined his opponent's actions and created a plan to take advantage of them. He made excellent use of not only his own quirk, but his partner's as well. Instead of engaging Bakugo in a long, drawn-out fight, like Bakugo wanted him to, he subdued him quickly and moved to assist his teammate to complete their objective. Correct, Yaoyorozu. Excellent analysis. All Might smiled, and Yaoyorozu bowed slightly with her arms at her sides. That was amazing, Midoriya. Ochako smiled as she congratulated him. You and Tsu both did great. Thanks, Ochako-chan. Tsu smiled at her friend. Midoriya-chan came up with a great strategy. No, I just knew how Bakugo would react is all. Izuku waved off, flustered by the compliments of the two pretty girls. The next trial pitted Team B as the heroes versus Team I as the villains. Unfortunately, it was over rather quickly. Todoroki had frozen the entire building in seconds. This left Kami and Toru frozen to the floor, enabling the ice user to walk into the room unhindered. It was only upon touching the bomb and not hearing All Might announce his victory that he realized something was up. And not going T to BB, so easy F fam. Kami chattered out as she wrapped her arms around herself for warmth. My feet. Toru whined as her bare feet had been frozen to the ground. What? Todoroki questioned, only to faintly notice that Kami was almost constantly exhaling a shimmering mist that had nothing to do with the frozen room. My quirk is called Glamour. It makes illusions. Kami shivered. If you can't find the weapon in the time limit, then we win. It won't take me 15 minutes to search this entire room. Todoroki replied as he started walking around the room with his hands out. Shoji came in after 2 minutes to help, and with his quirk, he simply made dozens of arms and covered the room in a few seconds. The illusion bomb was actually in the corner nearest the door when Shoji touched it with one of his arms. Hero team wins. All Might announced, and Todoroki quickly thawed the entire building. Ow, 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 my feet. Toru whimpered as she was helped by Kami down the stairs. When they arrived into the observation room, Izuku was already by the door waiting for them. Hagakure-san, are your feet okay? Having them frozen for so long could damage them. Izuku worried over the girl. They're super sore, Midoriya, Toru admitted as Kami helped her sit down on a bench in the room. I can heal them for you if you'll let me, Izuku offered, and almost every student perked up at hearing that. You can heal people, Midoriya? Yaoyorozu questioned with surprise. Healing quirks of any true strength are rare. Most can only heal bruises and cuts. You healed my ankle at the entrance exam, I remember. Ochako smiled brightly at him. Yeah, it was one of the first quirks I copied. It's called Healing Aura, and it came from a nurse that helped with my surgery. Izuku explained. Give me a second Hagakure. He smiled at the invisible girl as he held out his hands. Please place your feet on my palms. Okay. Toru responded, and Izuku felt the weight in his hands a moment later. Here we go. Izuku smiled as he activated two quirks. Healing Aura and Amplification compiled, and the green glow surrounded his hands and then Toru's feet. Oh, that feels funny, Midoriya. Toru stifled a giggle as her feet stopped hurting. It does sometimes. Izuku nodded with a grin at the bubbly invisible girl. Healing Aura is good at dealing with cuts and bruises, as Yaoyorozu said. But with a boosting quirk called Amplification, it can even heal more serious injuries, like the beginnings of frostbite. My feet feel great. Toru cheered a few moments later. Glad to hear it. Izuku beamed at the girl as the green glow faded away. That's amazing. Kami breathed out as she watched Toru put her shoes on and then jump off the bench. The invisible girl's shoes and gloves marking where the teen was prancing around the room without hesitation. I'll be happy to heal any injuries that are sustained during the trials if it's okay with you, All Might. Izuku offered. Of course, Midoriya. That's a heroic act already. All Might agreed, and all of the students quickly started thanking Izuku en masse. Izuku blushed and rubbed the back of his head, flustered by all of the thanks. It seems I may have misjudged you, Midoriya. All Might thought to himself as he watched the Verdette talk with his classmates. I have a bit too much resentment against him, and I almost took it out on you for having a similar quirk. I'm glad to see such a quirk actually used for good, instead of for selfish gain. The rest of the battle trials went off without any real problems. A few minor bruises, which Izuku healed in seconds for the injured, were the worst of the rest of the day. It wasn't until All Might dismissed them to the locker rooms to change back into their uniforms did Izuku overhear the girls' conversation. Ugh, my Edison barely did anything for our trial. Yaoyorozu complained. He just blatantly ogled me almost the entire time. Freaking pervert, Jiro huffed as she comforted the tall Ravenette. That grape is thirsty AF. Kami sked as she rubbed Momo's back consolingly. My costume doesn't help, I'm sure. Yaoyorozu lamented as she looked at her revealing costume. It was a leotard that left all of her cleavage exposed along with her stomach and didn't cover her legs at all. Her large belt helped cover her hips and upper thighs, but it showed off quite a lot. But I need skin exposure to use my quirk to the fullest. Yaoyorozu. I could try and help out if it'll help you. Izuku offered, and the 7 girls turned to look at the green-eyed teen. Thank you for the offer, Midoriya, but wouldn't you need to know the properties of my quirk to be able to suggest costume alterations? Yaoyorozu asked with curious eyes. Emitter type allows you to alter your lipids into other forms of matter by knowing the molecular structure of the item you wish to make. Creations are made from the body through the skin and are hampered by clothing. Though your lipids are finite and limit the amount of creations you can make, your quirk does not solely rely on them. The glow that is emitted from your skin when you are creating is also rapidly converting the gases and other forms of matter nearest to your body into the item you wish to create. Your creation speed is also influenced by how well you know the item in question. Izuku rattled off, and all of the girls, even Tsuyu who'd already experienced it, stared at him in shock. How could you? Yaoyorozu trailed off as she started at the Verdette in front of her. Wait, she suddenly exclaimed as what he'd said fully registered. What do you mean my creation isn't solely reliant on my lipids? That's how I've always used it. I'm sorry, Izuku panicked, thinking he might have offended the beautiful teen. My quirk has a side ability of making me really good at analyzing other quirks. Since I've had time to analyze how your quirk works at the assessment and now at the battle trials, I was able to figure it out a bit. I'm sorry, Midoriya. I was just surprised by how well you seem to know about my quirk. Yaoyorozu shook her head and bowed slightly in apology. Could you please explain what you meant about my quirk not relying on just my lipids? Oh no, I'm sorry if I freaked you out, Yaoyorozu. Izuku apologized again. With a deep breath, Izuku answered Momo's question. Your quirk, creation you called it, it seems to use your lipids only to make the framework of your creations. The multicolored glow that appears next to your body when you create is your quirk altering matter near you to create the rest of whatever item you're making around the converted lipid framework. You wouldn't be able to create cannons that weigh well over 50 kilograms from your lipids alone after all. I never even thought about. Yaoyorozu couldn't seem to complete her sentence in her shocked state. But when you just stop to really think about it, it makes so much sense. That was crazy. Mina gasped as she looked between Momo and Izuku. Can you do that with anybody's quirk? If I have time to see it in action and analyze it, then I think so. Izuku nodded. He did it to mine when we were strategizing for the battle trial. Tsuyu spoke up, and all the girls, barring Yaoyorozu, turned to look at the frog girl. It's actually what we spent most of the time talking about. He also told me my quirk can still grow and advance further. That quickly had all eyes back on Izuku, who flushed at the intense looks he was receiving. The stares were only broken when Yaoyorozu came out of her silence. Midoriya, thank you. Yaoyorozu spoke up, apparently over her shock, at least a bit. I never thought to re-examine my own quirk after I first learned about it. Back when I was a small child, I created for the quirk registration office, and they examined how my quirk worked. I never thought to question it further when I started making larger and heavier items. You've opened my eyes to the true potential of my quirk, and for that I want to sincerely thank you. The beautiful Ravinette bowed formally to the vedette. No, Yaoyorozu. It's fine, you don't have to bow. Izuku panicked a bit. I just have a weird hobby of analyzing quirks is all. It's not weird, it's super useful. Toru spoke up. Can you analyze mine sometime? I'd love to know what else I might be able to do. I wouldn't mind either. Jiro spoke up with a grin. If you can figure out things the person doesn't even know about their own quirk, then who knows what some of us have been overlooking. You're amazing, Midoriya. Ochako smiled brightly at him. Totes the best, Kami added with a smile of her own. Feel free to analyze my quirk anytime. Izuku wasn't even sure if Kami meant to, but she sounded very alluring when she'd said that. I'll try and help you all if you want. Izuku agreed with his head down as he tried to fight the red that was on his face. He was super unused to the attention of so many cute girls. Midoriya, if you want to offer suggestions for my costume, I'd welcome them. Yaoyorozu smiled happily at the teen. Izuku actually thought he saw sparkles around the almost bouncing Ravinette. I'll sketch something up for it tonight, Yaoyorozu. Izuku nodded back with a smile. He then almost ran off to the boys' locker room to change and escape. Ah, he shied. Kami purred, and all of the other girls looked at her. What? It's totes cute. Chapter 4, Costume, Quirk Analysis PT1. A bit more protection for the legs and knees, Izuku murmured as he sketched a new version of Momo's hero costume. Her need for skin exposure to use her quirk was manageable, but it was clear she preferred a design that felt more comfortable and secure around the upper body. For the redesign, Izuku created a modified top that offered solid support and full coverage for the chest and neck. A zipper kept it closed while still allowing adjustments if additional exposure was ever necessary. The design left most of her back uncovered, the largest surface area on the human body, making it ideal for creating larger items with ease. The shorts he'd sketched would cover more than her current leotard did as well. They went down to just above mid-thigh and had a utility belt stitched onto them, allowing Momo to carry supplies into the field. This left her stomach fully exposed from just under the top down to her hips, another large skin surface area she could use for bigger creations. Izuku had incorporated the same polycarbon armor, carbon nanotube technology, from his own suit into various parts of Momo's costume. Her hands and forearms had armor covering them on top. This left more of her arms revealed for making small items on the fly. He also incorporated some elbow pads to protect the joint and enable Momo to throw elbow strikes with more force if necessary. On the left arm, he had a touchscreen that would hold all the information Momo currently kept in the dictionary on the back of her suit. This should allow the Ravenet to quickly look up any molecular structures that she didn't have memorized already. Finally, he was finishing up his sketch with her boots. The ones she currently had were heeled, which wasn't as practical for Momo's mobility. So he'd made the design with standard soles and had them go up to just under her knee. The sketch added shin guards to protect her legs and allow the option of more damaging kicks. A set of knee pads to protect her joints, and he felt the design was complete. Momo was covered and protected better, but still had her back, stomach, and most of her arms and legs completely exposed for her quirk. I hope she likes this. Izuku smiled as he turned off his desk lamp. The teen stood and stretched before heading for bed. He'd show Momo the design in the morning at school, but for now, sleep. The next morning before homeroom. Ah, Yairose-san, I finished the design sketch, if you want to look at it. Izuku smiled nervously at the beautiful girl. Momo had been chatting with Jiro, Utsushimi, Mina, and Toru. The moment she registered his words, her eyes lit up, and she appeared to have sparkles around her as she almost bounced in excitement. Thank you, Midoriya-san. Momo smiled brightly at him, and Izuku instantly felt his cheeks heat up. Ooh, I want to see too, Mina declared happily. Me too, Toru agreed. Yamamo should be the first. Jiro reminded the two bubbly girls, though she was also moving to be able to look at the notebook while Momo did. Hey, I totes want the sneak peek too. Cammy giggled as she looked over Momo's shoulder. When Momo opened the notebook to the marked page, she was stunned. There she was on the page, very well drawn, in a hero costume that looked every bit as good as what a professional support company could design. Midoriya-san, I had no idea you were so talented at sketching and design. Momo breathed out in surprise. Izuku rubbed the back of his head and fought against the blush that tried to form. He wasn't exactly used to getting compliments from pretty girls like Momo. I've just had a lot of practice sketching over the years. Izuku waved off. Oh, if you want you can flip back a page and see your current costume to see my notes on it and why I changed what I did. Momo looked intrigued and flipped to the previous page. There was her current costume, again on a nicely drawn sketch of her, and little notes about each area Izuku hadn't understood or had changed. He's definitely got a point about the heels. Jiro commented, looking over the notes Izuku had made about Momo's current costume. Those can't be easy to fight in. Yeah, I was going to have heels on my costume at first too. Cammy nodded. Then my dad pointed out that they'd be murder on my feet after walking in them for patrols. Not to mention balance and footing when fighting. I honestly just went with the design company's suggestion for the footwear, Momo admitted as she looked the notes over. I like how he added these guards and pads for you, Yamamo. Mina pointed at the additions as Momo flipped back and forth between the pages. Definitely gives you more protection than the, well, nothing you had before. The touchscreen would speed things up too, right? Toru remarked excitedly. It's faster than flipping through a book after all. Midoriya-san, this is amazing. Momo breathed out happily. It covers what needs to be covered, while still allowing me the maximum use of my quirk. Thank you very much. No, there's no need for thanks. Izuku smiled and waved his hands. I just want all of us to be the best heroes we can be. I noticed you also kept Momo's appeal in mind with your design. Cammy teased the verdette boy and Izuku's eyes widened. I didn't, I was just, she needed skin exposure, so I. Izuku floundered before Cammy giggled. It's not a bad thing, Midori, so relax, Cammy reassured him. You saw my costume. I designed it to stand out and catch attention. It's padded and reinforced in key areas, but I also made sure it fits me well. A lot of villains underestimate heroes based on appearances, especially when they're distracted by something unexpected. When they hesitate for even a second, thinking, wait, what? That's my chance to take control of the situation and get the upper hand. Definitely makes sense. I kinda did the same with mine. Mina nodded. If they're too busy thinking with the lower head, they won't see the kick to the face coming in time. The pink girl giggled as she teasingly stuck out her tongue. Mina-chan gets it. Cammy laughed, raising her hand for a high five, which the acid quirk user happily returned. Toru joined in the laughter, while both Momo and Jiro were blushing. Meanwhile, Izuku looked completely overwhelmed, his brain practically rebooting after all the unexpected conversation. Anyway. Momo tried to get back to the initial topic of their conversation. I very much like this new design you came up with, Midoriya-san. Would you mind if I kept these pages to send to the support design company for a costume redesign? Feel free, Yayarosa-san. Izuku nodded as he shook off the last of his embarrassment. Thank you very much. Momo smiled beautifully at him, and Izuku smiled back reflexively. She really had a pretty smile. Momo carefully removed the pages featuring her, hopefully, soon-to-be new costume, and then returned the notebook back to Izuku. So, when would you be free for a quirk analysis? Kami questioned as she leaned forward to get closer to Izuku. I'm psyched to hear what you could figure out about my quirk. Oh, well, maybe during foundational heroics? It would depend on what All Might has us doing today, though. Izuku offered the fawn-haired girl. She's super close. He thought to himself as Kami practically leaned into his personal space. Did he mention she filled out her uniform very well? Good morning, Midoriya-kun. Ochako smiled as she and Tsuyu had entered the classroom and spotted Izuku talking with the other girls of the class. Good morning, Karo. Tsuyu smiled at everyone. Cheiko-chan, Tsu, Mina, Toru, and Kami greeted the remaining two girls of their class. The girls chatted together for a moment, which gave Izuku time to cool his head of Kami's forwardness. The girl might be the death of him with how open and free she was. So what's going on? Tsuyu asked the group, and Momo smiled as she showed them the new costume design that Izuku had sketched for her. Oh wow, Midoriya-kun, this is great. Ochako praised the verdette. Thank you, Uraraka. Izuku smiled at the brunette. I'm just happy Yayarozu likes it so much. Get to your seats. Homeroom is starting. Aizawa instructed as he entered the room. The man looked as worn out as ever as he stood behind the podium. All of Class 1A quickly got to their seats and sat down just as the bell rang to signal the start of classes. Good morning, Aizawa-sensei. The students greeted their teacher. Aizawa nodded and then looked over the teens. I've looked over the videos of the battle trials you all had in foundational heroics. Most of you did well, but a few of you did little to nothing for your team. Multiple students flinched at the gaze of their teacher. Some of them knew they'd be singled out while others thought they might be as well. Firstly, Mineta, you did almost nothing during your team's match. Yayarozu did everything from coming up with the plan to barricading the door to the room. She pushed her quirk and her ingenuity to complete the task. You, on the other hand, spent the whole match standing around and practically drooling over her. You offered no help to your partner whatsoever and, in fact, made her uncomfortable, which destroyed any chance of proper teamwork. Don't forget that you're the first on the chopping block. I'd best see an improvement in both your effort and your behavior, or you'll find yourself expelled before you know it. Yes, sensei. Mineta trembled in his seat behind Izuku. Todoroki, you got overconfident in your quirk and tried to disregard your teammate entirely. Aizawa stared at the two-tone student. That kind of lone wolf attitude often leads to heroes dying in the field, so work on it. Yes, sir. Todoroki nodded. Another thing, as your teacher, I have a copy of every student's quirk registry. I know that you have both ice and fire abilities. I had better see you utilizing both of them in your training. I don't care who you're related to. I won't keep a student in the hero course if they refuse to give it their all. Do I make myself clear? Aizawa asked the hybrid quirk user. Yes, sir. Todoroki replied, though it was with a bitter look on his face and his fists clenched on his desk. You students weren't able to hear each other's radios, but the teachers could. Bakugo, if you don't shape up your attitude, you'll also find yourself out of the hero course. There is no place for vindictive, overly aggressive bullies in this school. If you want to be a hero, you'd better start acting like one. Aizawa stared down the explosive blonde. Yes, sir. Bakugo ground out, still furious about his complete loss to Izuku. Good. Aizawa nodded. Now let's start the first class. Foundational Hero Studies Afternoon. All right, students. Today we'll be getting a firm grasp on how you use your quirks and working on new ways to apply them. All Might explain to the 20 students of 1A standing in front of Cementos, Aizawa, and himself, all of whom were wearing their gym uniforms rather than their costumes. We've managed to secure Gym Gamma for the first years today. Gym Gamma, also known as the Training Kitchen Lab or TKL for short, is a training facility for quirk development that I designed myself. Cementos informed the students as he placed his hands on the concrete floor. The terrain of the massive gymnasium quickly shifted as large platforms and cliffs formed from the ground. With my quirk, I can mold the area to help with any form of training our students need. Normally, we'd have Cementos, Izawa, Ectoplasm, and I supervising all of you at once. All Might explained. However, as this was a rare opportunity to secure this gym for the first years, we decided to do it even if that cut down the number of teachers we could have supervising. We'll each be supervising 2 students at a time. Izawa spoke up about the plan for the class time. If you're not currently working with a teacher, you should be preparing yourself to do so. Sensei, I have a question. Kami raised her hand. Yes, young Utsushimi? All Might pointed to the girl. Like, Midoriya is super good at analyzing quirks, so while we wait, could we get some ideas from him? Kami asked, and all 3 teachers turned to Izuku, making his eyes widen and causing his cheeks to redden. Is this true, Midoriya? Izawa asked, and Izuku nodded slightly. It's a side ability of my quirk, Sensei. Izuku explained. It makes it easier to figure out and understand quirks that I see, especially if I've seen them a few times and have had some time to think. I think that sounds like a good idea. All Might exclaimed with his signature smile. I'd like to run a test first. Izawa interjected. Midoriya, can you show me your analytical ability? Yes, Sensei. Izuku agreed. So whose quirk should I analyze? Mine. Izawa replied as his eyes glowed red as he focused on Izuku. Izuku felt all of his copied quirks fade. He knew they were still there, but it was like something was between him and the quirks which prevented him from using them. It was a strange feeling for sure, and not one Izuku could completely describe. His analytical mind was still perfectly functional and was already parsing information and making connections between his teacher's glowing eyes and his inability to use his copied emitter and transformation quirks. After about 20 seconds of erasing Izuku's quirks, Izawa blinked, and the verdette felt the quirks he held become accessible to him again. That was odd. Izuku blinked before shaking his head. That was my erasure quirk, Izawa explained as he looked at his student. Now, what can you tell me about it? Izuku placed his right hand on his chin, and his right elbow was cupped by his left palm as he adopted a thinking pose. Here it comes. Mina giggled quietly to the girls that had already experienced Izuku's analytical ability. Your quirk is an emitter type. It works through line of sight and seems to shut down the quirk factor of the target. This sudden disabling of the quirk factor renders quirks unusable for as long as yours is in effect. Blinking appears to end the effect. I suspect that breaking your line of sight with the target would have the same effect. Most erasure-type quirks also don't affect mutant-type quirks, and yours seems to fall into this group. While your quirk can even disable all of my copied quirks, you didn't nullify my true quirk at all. I believe your quirk also puts a fairly large strain on your eyes as well, most probably in the form of eye strain, ocular pain, or potentially dry eye from a lack of blinking. Izuku spoke clearly as he was too deep into his analysis to notice everyone, except the girls, staring at him in shock. That was accurate. Well done, Midoriya. Izawa nodded to the verdette. All right then. All Might grinned at the students. If you're not being assisted by a teacher, feel free to have young Midoriya analyze your quirk if he's willing. Izuku nodded to his idol, showing he was willing to help his classmates, and All Might gave him a thumbs up. Izuku almost squealed in happiness. With that done, Aoyama, Mina, Fu, Ida, Ochako, and Kami were called up first to show their teachers how they currently use their quirks. The rest of the class, excluding Bakugo, Todoroki, and the ever-shy Koda, quickly gathered around Midoriya. Dude, check out my quirk first, Kaminari said as he held up his hand and sparked electricity from it. Hey, haven't you ever heard of ladies first? Toru asked as she stood next to Jiro and Momo. Izuku has already shared his analytical ability with my quirk. Momo shook her head. I do not mind if others go first. I'm good either way. Jiro shrugged, though internally she really would like to have her quirk analyzed, just to see if both she and her mother, who had an identical quirk, had missed anything. It would still be good manners, though. Kirishima nodded with a smile. All right, you've got a point. Kaminari agreed, and Toru cheered at her victory. Me first, Midori. Toru giggled and Izuku smiled at the bubbly invisible girl. Your quirk is a mutant type, so I've had time to analyze it a bit already. Izuku informed the girl. First, your quirk is definitely invisibility and not transparency. You can clearly see both yourself and everything else, which wouldn't be possible if it was transparency. Light would simply pass through the cone cells in your eyes. Your invisibility seems to come from the bending of light around your body, or perhaps more specifically, your cells. This renders you invisible, but still allows you to see. With some training and practice, I'm fairly certain that you could gain some control of your ability to bend light and use it offensively. Perhaps you could learn how to refract light into blinding flashes. Though there is also the possibility that you may be able to shape the light as it bends around your body and cover a limited area with it. You could distort parts of the space around you or possibly hide items entirely. The verdette finished, leaving everyone amazed at the complex breakdown of what they had assumed to be a fairly simple quirk. Oh wow. Toru trailed off, sounding stunned. I never even thought about why I was invisible. Refracting light, bending light, my quirk could possibly do that. I strongly suspected of being capable to do so. Izuku nodded to the invisible girl. You're the best, Midori. Toru cheered happily as she moved over to the side next to Momo. She was already musing on how she might gain some control over her quirk, and Momo was smiling as she offered ideas to her friend. I guess I'm next. Jiro smiled at Izuku. Hit me with your best shot. Mutant type allows you to channel the sound of your heartbeat through your ear jacks and into whatever you plug them into. The lobes are prehensile and can stretch, though I'm not sure on the full range. As I've seen you plug your jacks into your phone before, I believe you can use them to listen to any device with the proper port? I can, Jiro confirmed with a nod. Then I'd reason that your quirk can also take in, amplify, and redirect any sound that a device you're plugged into can produce or make. I'd suggest testing that theory out as soon as possible, because I notice your costume's boots have directional speakers built into them. Additionally, your jacks have metal-like traits, but seem completely organic. I'd suggest putting them through conditioning to toughen them up further. If they can heal as I believe they can, much like the rest of your body, then they'll be slightly stronger after each minor injury. Stronger jacks would most likely entail more materials you could puncture and then transfer your amplified sound waves through. You could also continue to push the limits of your body's amplification ability to see just how loud your quirk can make any sound you take in from an outside source, or how much it could amplify your own heartbeat. Izuku finished his analysis, and Jiro quickly pulled out her phone with wide eyes. She plugged her right jack into her phone and her left jack into her boot. With a deep breath, she tapped her phone's screen, and a loud guitar riff emerged from the boot speaker. How did I never consider this before? Jiro looked shocked at what neither she or her mother had ever considered. This opens up so many more options for my quirk. Holy shit. The rocker girl breathed out. You're awesome, Midoriya. Thank you, Jiro. Izuku smiled at the purplet girl while scratching his cheek. He'd always gotten called weird for his analysis hobby before. It was a new experience to have it be so appreciated. Does anybody mind if I go next? Kaminari questioned the group of guys. Seeing no arguments, Kaminari showed off his electrification quirk for Izuku a bit more. Izuku had analyzed it a bit during the battle trials, and with a few seconds of viewing, he gave his analysis. Clearly an emitter type. Your body can produce large voltages of electricity, and you can let that stored electricity release into your surroundings. You have no way to direct said electricity as of now. I'd look into support items that can channel your current or allow you to launch it with accuracy. You also don't seem to be able to control anything but the voltage of your electricity. The amperage seems to be staying consistent. I believe you have the capacity to not only increase your storage, but also the voltage you can output. Control, rather than power, will be your best friend, Kaminari. Since your quirk has the drawback of shorting out your brain temporarily, you may also want to look into a support item that functions similarly to a circuit breaker. That should keep your kickback from rendering you a liability in the field. As a further suggestion, you may want to work in some type of electric wiring into your costume as a means to produce a defensive full-body current without having to constantly release your electricity from every part of your body. Izuku took a breath after finishing his analysis. He'd only taken about 3 in total during said analysis. Dude, that's awesome. I figured I could eventually generate a lot more, but what you said about control makes so much more sense. I won't risk shorting myself out if I control the electricity, rather than just unleashing it all. You're some kind of genius, man. Kaminari praised his classmate, and he moved over to the side with ideas clearly bouncing around in his head. Now you've got me excited, man. Sato grinned at the shorter teen. My quirk is pretty basic, but the way you've analyzed everyone else's, I'm wondering how much I've missed or overlooked for my whole life. Your quirk is amazing, Sato. You shouldn't doubt yourself. Izuku shook his head. Based on how you've explained your quirk to me, as well as the drawback, I'd have to say that you've only scratched the surface. You use normal granulated sugar to activate your quirk, correct? Yeah, just the stuff you can buy off the shelf anywhere. Sato confirmed with a nod. Have you ever tried other forms of sugar for activating your quirk? Like brown sugar? Or cane sugar? Confectioner's sugar, muscovado sugar, turbinado sugar, pearl sugar, sanding sugar, all of them are either from different sources or have different levels of refinement and processing. There are even substances like molasses that may work with your quirk. I believe that these differences would most likely impact your quirk in different ways. Plus, the kickback of your quirk could probably be better controlled with training and testing of your limits. Your quirk may have the effect of increasing your strength from regular sugar, but I believe it may have far more applications based on the type of sugar you consume. While basic granulated sugar increases your strength, it may very well be that turbinado sugar increases your speed, or that sanding sugar could perhaps increase your durability. Also, a few capsules of stevia may help in the short term for regulating your drawback, as it helps lower blood sugar levels. Izuku smiled at the larger, brunette teen. Well, damn. Sato blinked before smiling and chuckling. That's impressive, Midoriya. I actually use brown sugar and confectioner's sugar when I bake and cook. Why I never thought to pop a few grams of them and try to activate my quirk, I'll never know. But I do know what I'm going to be trying soon. Thanks for the analysis, bro. No problem, Sato. Izuku smiled as he fist bumped the Sugar Rush user. Shoji, go next, bro. I want to see what Midoriya says about your quirk. Kirishima beckoned the tallest of Class 1A closer. The multi-armed boy shrugged and stepped forward. I'm in your care, Midoriya. Shoji nodded and Izuku smiled at the masked teen. I find your quirk very interesting, Shoji. Izuku informed the Dupliarms user. You can recreate any part of your body from your extra arms, even if they're as completely different from each other as a hand, mouth, ear, or eye. You morph and recreate the structures so fluidly and quickly that I'm truly blown away. But if you can recreate any structure of your body, could you create a bigger version of the same structure? A hand, for example. Could you make one twice the size of a normal hand? Could you create an ear with a different ear canal and eardrum that could pick up sounds that normal human ears can't hear? Or potentially eyes that could see outside the visible light spectrum? A nose with more olfactory sensory neurons? I usually just let my quirk handle the formation, Shoji stated with a thoughtful look in his eyes. I don't know how I would go about altering the function of an ear or an eye, though. I can try out the size changing, though. With that, Shoji held up his second set of arms and focused. The hands morphed a bit, becoming fleshy stumps for a moment, before his hands began to reform. But the newly formed hands were noticeably larger, almost twice the size of his primary hands, in fact. The silver-haired boy blinked at his accomplishment before clenching and unclenching the large hands. The weight is throwing me off a bit, but I could get used to that with some practice and training. Mostly, it was just a matter of focusing on making them form how I wanted. Maybe read up on human anatomy? Figure out how other systems in the body work, and if you could alter more of what you recreate. Then again, you may not even have the limitation of purely human ears, eyes, and limbs. If you knew how it functioned, who's to say that you couldn't form working pit organs like a snake? Being able to see the infrared or thermal spectrum would be an amazing ability for a hero. Izuku beamed at the taller teen with almost sparkles in his eyes. Finally being allowed to freely analyze quirks had put him in such a good mood that his own excitement was shining through. I'll do that, Midoriya. To think I've only been using the bare minimum all this time. Shoji shook his head in amazement as he once again looked down at his enlarged fists. It was my pleasure, Shoji. Izuku shook hands with his classmate. All right, time for the next group of 6. All Might called out as the first group returned. Kaminari, Kirishima, Kota, Sato, Shoji, and Jiro. You're up. Midori, I want an analysis. Please, 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 please. Mina bounced over to him while Cammy giggled at her pink friend. Me next. The fawn-haired girl winked at him. No fair. Mineta called out. We've been waiting. Dude, it's no big deal who goes first or last. Zero shook his head at the diminutive boy. I wouldn't mind getting one. You were amazing when you analyzed Momo's yesterday. Ochako smiled at him, and Izuku felt his heart thump in his chest. I'll help everybody if I can. Izuku promised as he looked at the remaining classmates he hadn't gotten to yet. Well, the ones that wanted his analysis at least. Considering Todoroki hadn't approached him and Bakugo was off to the side of the group scowling. He still had time right now, so Izuku would keep going. If he could help his classmates become better heroes, then that's what he'd do. Chapter 5, Quirk Analysis PT2, Class Representative. Can I go next, Midori? Mina asked with a bright grin. I'll go after Mina, if that's cool. Kemi spoke up. Uraraka should go after her. Kirishima spoke up. That way all the girls are good, and then the rest of us guys can go. Yeah, sure. Mineta nodded, though everyone noticed his eyes roaming. All of the girls glared back at him when their eyes met. All right then, Ishido will start with you. Izuku smiled and got a beaming smile in return as Mina practically bounced up to him. Your acid quirk is very interesting, Mina. Izuku praised the pinkette. I assume you've had to build up resistance to your own acids over time? Yeah, I hurt myself a few times growing up by creating stuff that was too strong for me to handle. Mina admitted with a sheepish grin. Then you'll need to keep building up your resistance. The stronger the acids you can make, the more versatility you'll have in the field. Also, you might want to study up on some chemistry with Momo. If you can freely control which acids you produce, you could become invaluable in dozens of situations. As for direct applications, I'd recommend focusing your control on both solubility and viscosity. The more control you have over your acid, the less likely you are to harm someone by accident. Since it's a liquid, you could also increase your effective range by learning to control the tension or pressure of your body, or possibly by making a nozzle with your fingers and palms. With higher resistance, free control, some extra knowledge, and different direct applications during use, you'll be an amazing hero, Ishido. Izuku grinned at the pink girl who had wide eyes at having so many suggestions given for her quirk. Midori, that's so cool. Mina cheered as she hopped up and down. Izuku politely looked to the side instead of staring at what the jumping was doing to Mina's assets. You're welcome, Ishido. Izuku smiled as Mina skipped over to the other girls that had already had their quirks analyzed. The group began to chat, even more with Mina suddenly talking to Momo. The pinkette even had her hands in the classic begging position. Izuku was fairly certain Mina was asking the resident genius for chemistry help. My turn, cutie. Cammy winked at him with a teasing smile. Izuku flustered for a moment, which made Cammy giggle at him. He was so fun to tease. Though to be honest, she really would like to get his number soon. See, Cammy. Izuku stumbled for a brief moment at using her first name. But the fawn-haired girl had asked him to, so he'd do so. Your glamour quirk is very impressive. It can produce both visual and auditory illusions from what I've gathered. Yep. Cammy popped the P with a grin. As it appears to be based solely on your breath, I'd recommend breathing exercises. With the level of control you've demonstrated so far in class, I'd imagine you can fake voice as well. But what about other sounds? Can you create full-on auditory illusions that could potentially deafen the people under your quirk's effect? What about the other three senses? Can you make tactile illusions? What about olfactory or gustatory illusions? Izuku questioned, and Cammy raised her hands. Slow down, Midori, take a breath, fam. Cammy teased, and Izuku rubbed the back of his head. As far as I'm aware, my quirk only lets me make visual and auditory illusions, Cammy answered. Though I've never tried to really see how deep into the illusion I could pull someone. The illusions usually only linger for less than a minute too. With proper breath control, I'm sure you could maintain your illusions for a considerable amount of time, Cammy. Izuku encouraged the pretty teen. Until you test out whether or not you can add the other three senses to your illusions, you can focus on other aspects, like making more complex illusions, pulling targets deeper into your illusions so they can't fight effectively, and making moves too. Oh, making moves. What kinds of moves would those be? Cammy teased the verdette as she leaned closer with a saucy grin. Seeing his face go tomato red had her giggling again. He was such a cinnamon roll. I was AC actually thinking L like illusionary clones and stuff. Izuku stuttered out. Huh, that would be super lit, Cammy remarked as she tapped her pouty lips with her index finger. I could surround enemies all by myself. If your illusions are dispersed by changes to the surroundings, you could also try support gear that would, for lack of a better term, let your illusions stick to them. It could provide good fallback in case you were fighting a villain whose quirk had area of effect abilities. Though I'm curious, how many people can you show your illusions to? Is there a set range? Izuku inquired curiously. Usually about 50 meters at most, Cammy replied as she took on a cute thinking pose of her own, with her index finger now on her chin and a cute little frown on her lips, though I've been steadily improving it over the years. It was only about 5 meters when I first really got it under control. I'd suggest continuing to work on refinement and techniques then. See how thoroughly people can be ensnared by your illusions. Try to expand the number of senses you can affect. Also work on breathing exercises to keep your illusions up for longer periods of time. Izuku grinned, and Cammy smiled back. You're, totes amazing, Midori, Cammy praised him. It's really hot. Izuku's face once again went nuclear red. Cammy turned to face Ochako and gently slapped the brunette's hand. Tag in, Chako-chan. Cammy grinned, and Ochako smiled at the fawn-haired girl. I guess I'm next, Midoriya-kun. Ochako grinned cheerfully. Looks like it, Uraraka-san, Izuku chuckled. Ready whenever you are. Ochako bounced on her heels a bit in anticipation. Your quirk is an emitter type and works based on what you touch with the pads on your fingertips. You seem to have some nausea issues when you use your quirk on yourself. You told me your weight limit is currently 3 tons too. As far as your quirk goes, you'll need to train it to increase the amount of weight you can affect. I'm curious if you couldn't eventually spread the effect from item to item so long as each item was in contact with the others. Though I believe it would still be capped at your weight limit. As for further developments, I'd look into support gear that makes use of tethers or cables that could be attached to things you make weightless. Imagine making a car weightless, swinging it around on a tether or cable, like a flail, and then launching it at a rampaging villain. At the last moment before impact, you return the car's weight and the full force strikes the villain all at once. Izuku was off on a muttering spree in his excitement over her quirk and its potential applications. That could be useful. Ochako looked amazed at the potential her quirk could possess even with just a simple support item added to it. She kinda froze for a moment then, her face paling. Though I'd have to only use it on really durable villains. She poked her fingers together. I don't think I'd want to see the result if I aimed wrong. Her voice steadily got quieter as she went, with Izuku paling as well at the thought. She took a breath and shook her head, trying to go back to excited. If I could overcome my nausea when using my quirk on myself, I could even use a grappling gun-type item to improve my mobility. Her eyes practically sparkled at the thought. On that note, you might want to think about having your costume altered a bit to put a bit of pressure on your wrists and neck. There are pressure points there that help with nausea. The biggest cause of your nausea probably has to do with the semicircular canals in your ears. They help regulate balance, and when they're disturbed, by a sudden loss of gravity as an example, they'll give you a case of vertigo. You might be able to train that weakness away, but some support gear could also help. Medicines such as motion sickness pills could also work, I think. I believe you'll be an excellent hero, Uraraka-san. Combat, support, or rescue, you'll be super helpful. Izuku encouraged the brown-eyed girl. Thank you, Midoriya-kun. Ochako beamed at him, and Izuku felt his heart thump at how cute she looked. No problem, Uraraka-san. Izuku smiled even as he fought to keep his cheeks from burning. Ochako happily went over to the girls to start discussing ideas. Shiro stepped up next and grinned. What are you thinking, Midoriya? Shiro asked curiously. Is there something I'm missing? Or have I been on the right track? A mutant type with quite a few applications, Izuku began his analysis. I've seen you both fire your tape off and reel it back in, so I believe you already know of its mobility applications. Shiro nodded with a grin. How much have you experimented with it? Can you change the type of tape? For example, can you make double-sided tape? What about duct tape? Can you change the tape's color? Can you fire off more than one strand per elbow? I figured out how to make double-sided tape last year actually, but it was touch and go for the first few months after I figured it out. I think I can do multiple strands at once, but I haven't really tried before. As for changing the type or color, I've never actually tried. Zero responded with a thoughtful look. Well, if you can't change the type drastically, you have other options, such as altering the thickness of the tape or controlling the adhesiveness. Color may or may not be out of your reach, but it could be good for catching the eye of other heroes in the field. That way they can be alerted to the direction of a fleeing villain that you're in pursuit of, or if you find yourself needing backup. Other than that, I'd suggest trying to fire multiple strands of tape from each elbow. You might even look into firing a single strand, but splitting it as you do. You could potentially make a net or barricade in a single shot with proper control. Izuku theorized the different applications of his classmate's quirk. I see what you're saying. Zero nodded as he thought about Izuku's suggestions and analysis. I guess I've got some work ahead of me to see how much control I really have. The black-haired boy looked thoughtfully at his elbows. Thanks for the analysis, Midoriya. I'll start practicing with your ideas in mind today. No problem, Zero. Izuku nodded to the other boy. Let me know how it works out. It could be that some changes will open up a whole new aspect of your quirk. Will do. Zero grinned as he went to think about his quirk training. Me next, Mineta cried out, and Izuku nodded in acceptance to the short boy. Mutant type. The balls you produce have incredible tensile strength and adhesiveness. But from what I've seen, using too many in quick successions could cause damage to your head. Can you alter their adhesiveness? Can you make them stronger or weaker? Are you the only thing they don't stick to? Izuku asked a few questions since he'd only gotten to see Mineta's quirk in action once during the assessment test. The stickiness is based on my physical condition, Mineta replied. If I'm in good health, their adhesiveness is maxed, and they last about half a day. So no ability to alter any of their other properties? Izuku questioned. Not that I'm aware of, Mineta shook his head. I figure I'll have to focus on capture more than anything. The balls can stick to each other, correct? Have you considered forming them into constructs like chains? Or maybe making a cushion-like shield between yourself and an opponent? Izuku postulated a few ideas. I guess that could be possible, Mineta nodded. Though I'll bleed a lot to make constructs that of any real size. You'll need to toughen up your scalp then. I'm afraid the only way to do that is through conditioning training. You'll have to go beyond your current limit and then push even further. Mutant types only advance through rigorous physical exertion, Izuku explained. Oh man, that's gonna hurt like hell. Mineta grabbed his head in phantom pain. Some support gear that you could link up by attaching the balls to them may help out too. You said you'd probably focus on capture, so things like nets, bolos, or tethers could prove useful. Izuku laid out some options for the shorter boy. I'll think on it, Midoriya. Thanks for the heads up. Mineta gave thumbs up as he went to talk to Zero about ideas. It would seem that moi am up next, monsieur. Aoyama posed as he got Izuku's attention. Giving a friendly smile, Izuku nodded to the blonde boy. Emitter type, you fire energy from your navel in short but powerful bursts. While it appears in the visible spectrum, it isn't just light. You wouldn't receive any recoil if it was massless light. Your 50-meter dash during the assessment showed the recoil your beam produces, Izuku commented. You are correct. My sparkling laser is a unique form of energy rather than simple light. Aoyama nodded. The sparkles can't be stopped. You also mentioned that if you fire it for more than a second, you'll suffer abdominal stress or injury. Your belt also shows the traits of a daily support item meant to keep your quirk from firing accidentally. I won't ask why. That's not my place to pry, but I believe you'll be able to fully control it in the future, Izuku encouraged him. Aoyama's normal smile softened a bit and seemed more genuine in Izuku's eyes for a moment. As for utilizing your quirk, your costume is amazingly well thought out. Incorporating points to redirect your beam to your shoulders and knees gives you a lot more options and was frankly a stroke of genius. As much as you may not like it, emitter-type quirks only develop further by forcing them past their limits. So, you'll have to build up your abdomen with constant usage. You're on the skinny side too, so building up your core might help you control the pain as well. Aoyama grimaced slightly for a moment and looked a little blue in the face. Also, perhaps you could use a bit more refinement of your control to change the nature of your beam. By focusing it down to a thin beam, you could make it an effective cutting force. You might want to look into support gear that could store some of your energy for prolonged use. This could, in theory, be a temporary fix for your current time limit. You have the knight motif already, so a shining sword would fit, right? It would even give you melee combat options if you ever ran across a villain that was impervious to blasts. Plus, this theoretical sword could be used to help free people from rubble or vehicles they're trapped in. "C'est merveilleux, Monsieur Midoriya," Aoyama exclaimed, his indigo eyes sparkling brightly. "I shall become a beacon for those in need of a shining knight. My sparkles will never dim with such wonderful ideas." Happy to help, Izuku smiled as the blonde teen practically started sparkling even without his quirk. "I'll go next if you'd like, Midoriya." Ida nodded to the verdette. "Sure thing, Ida." Izuku smiled at the earnest teen. "A mutant type, of course. Your engines let you rapidly accelerate and maintain high velocity. Your legs seem to have undergone natural strengthening because of this, though I believe you've also conditioned them further yourself." "Indeed." Ida nodded with a grin. "I plan to use my legs as my main form of offense in the field. Therefore, it was paramount that I strengthen them as much as possible." "Agreed." Izuku nodded. "To further your quirk usage, I'd suggest consistently upping the time you can spend in top gear. The longer you can maintain max speed and output, the further you'll push your quirk. As I told my Netta, mutant-type quirks only advance when physically forced past their limits. You may also want to incorporate the most efficient cooling system you can fit into your costume. I believe overheating will stall you out, and that could leave you as a liability on the field." "Indeed, when I hit maximum output, I can usually only maintain it for a short 10-second burst," Ida informed the multi-quirk user. "As I further develop my quirk, I hope to be able to not only increase speed, but how long I can maintain it as well. Additionally, you may want to look into specialized attachments to your costume," Izuku suggested. "Thrust, when focused to a smaller point, will give you explosive speed and could be used for added mobility if paired with proper support gear. Heck, you may even be able to attain short-distance flight. That could be useful for getting around obstacles and continuing pursuit of a villain." "Yes, I see what you mean." Ida held his chin as he pondered on Izuku's observations. "My speed can be hindered if I have nowhere to run or if a large obstruction blocks my path. Limited flight to help deal with such obstacles would be useful." "Exactly," Izuku nodded. "It could also enable you to make a safe landing if ever you were thrown into the air, or help you reach people trapped in out-of-the-way places that you couldn't normally run to." "Thank you for your analysis, Midoriya. I shall look into implementing your ideas in the near future," Ida thanked while making a chopping motion with his right arm. "No problem, Ida." Izuku smiled at the taller teen. "Until Kirishima returns, it seems that I am the last, Midoriya." Tokoyami nodded to Izuku. "All right then, let's get started," Izuku offered. "I've never actually seen a sentient quirk like yours before, so I'm thrilled to be able to analyze it. It seems to be an emitter type, but does it have complete autonomy, or are you always in control? Is its range limited? Can it be damaged or destroyed?" "Dark Shadow has an effective range of about 30 meters, but can reach just over 40. Its size and shape are semi-malleable, but it mostly retains the same overall form. I've yet to find anything that can truly damage Dark Shadow, so I'm doubtful of its ability to be destroyed outright. As for autonomy, it can speak and act to a limited degree without my input, but it becomes less controllable the darker it gets, with its strength growing proportionally." Tokoyami answered Izuku's questions. "I see, that's amazing. I believe you mostly use Dark Shadow for mid to long-range combat," Izuku surmised. "Indeed, Dark Shadow's strength makes that the best option," Tokoyami nodded. "If you wanted to gain a better handle on Dark Shadow, I believe you'll need to overcome it in full darkness. But if you always leave combat to Dark Shadow and keep at a distance, I worry about your melee and close quarters options. You said Dark Shadow's form was semi-malleable. Have you ever considered using it as a cowl? Letting Dark Shadow cover your body would increase your defense and strength, while giving you melee options against fast opponents that may be able to avoid Dark Shadow at mid and long range," Izuku theorized. You make a good point, Midoriya." Tokoyami nodded. I have been a bit over-reliant on Dark Shadow's power. It would be good to take care of the glaring weakness of my close-quarters combat. What say you, Dark Shadow? The sentient shadow monster emerged from Tokoyami's stomach and looked Izuku over for a moment. He's got a point, the shadow beast commented. I guess I can cover you and keep up your defense while you handle the offense. The sentient quirk shrugged, and Izuku almost squealed at how cool it was to see such a unique quirk. Shiro, Tokoyami, Hagakure, Mineta, Bakugo, and Yaoyorozu, you're up. All Might called loudly as the second group started approaching the rest of the students. The named students moved over to the three teachers and left Izuku and Todoroki as the only students not to be called yet. Yo, Midoriya, think I can get an analysis? Kirishima asked with a wave. Of course, Kirishima, Izuku agreed. I'm pretty psyched to see what you have to say about my quirk. Kirishima smiled as he hardened his hand and forearm. My quirk isn't exactly amazing or flashy. Your quirk is amazing, Kirishima. You shouldn't doubt it. Izuku shook his head. Transformation types are interesting. They advance and develop as a sort of in-between of emitter types and mutant types. Your hardening seems to take on a rock or crystalline structure. With training, you've probably built that up from only a moderate increase in sturdiness, correct? Yeah, how did you know? Kirishima looked shocked. Most transformation types start out fairly small scale. Izuku shrugged with a smile. But I can already tell you're nowhere near your full capabilities. You can push so much farther. In fact, let's try a little experiment. Experiment? Kirishima questioned. Yeah, I think you're much closer to advancing your quirk than you think. Izuku grinned at the redhead. You're holding yourself back by doubting your power, Kirishima. Activate your quirk, full body please. Okay. Kirishima blinked as his body took on a rough, sharp texture. What now? Do it again. Izuku smiled confidently. What? Kirishima questioned confused. Do it again. Force your quirk to activate again. Izuku encouraged him. But my quirk is already active. Kirishima looked perplexed. Is it? Izuku asked, and Kirishima blinked. Are you really using all of it? Yep. The redhead looked a bit unsure. Then prove it, and force it again. Izuku had both of his fists clenched in front of him as he encouraged the other teen. All right, I'll try. Kirishima roared out as he tried to activate his quirk while maintaining it. He felt a strong resistance, like his body was fully flexed and he was trying to move. He couldn't move past the resistance. This was his limit. More. Stronger. Denser. More. Izuku almost ordered the other boy. The verdette was fully caught up in trying to help his classmate that he didn't notice the rest watching them. Rah! Kirishima forced his quirk past the resistance. He felt like something cracked, and then the resistance was gone. He felt heavy but strangely stronger. Holy crap, Kiri! Mina exclaimed loudly, and Kirishima opened his eyes. He noticed everyone looking at him in shock. Looking down at his hands, he could see why. They looked like claws. His arms seemed jagged, and he looked down at his chest to see it looking like jagged, dense rock. Dude, what happened? Kaminari asked in shock. You look crazy tough. I just did what Midoriya told me. Kirishima replied distractedly before he looked up at Izuku. Congratulations, Kirishima. Izuku smiled brightly. Your quirk just advanced. This is hard to maintain, Kirishima mentioned, and just like that his quirk deactivated. The redhead stumbled slightly, and Izuku caught his arm. That takes a lot out of me. You just developed it. Izuku grinned happily. It'll take a while until you can use it just as easily as you use the current level. You just need practice and training. Thanks, Midoriya. I can't believe I was able to go so much further. Kirishima smiled. I was so close and didn't even know it. You just needed to stop doubting yourself and your quirk, Kirishima. Izuku waved off the thanks. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Kirishima looked at Izuku's face when he heard that. He saw the same look in the verdette's eyes that he'd seen in his own in the mirror, back when he almost lost his drive to be a hero. I feel that, bro. Kirishima nodded to the verdette as he stood up straight. Yeah. Izuku gave a lopsided smile. But we have to move beyond the past if we want to be heroes, right? Heck yeah. Kirishima fist bumped Izuku while everybody came over to congratulate Kirishima on his new development. Todoroki, Midoriya, you're up. All Might called out, and Izuku started. Looking over and seeing the third group returning, he realized how long he'd been helping Kirishima. Jogging over to the three teachers, Izuku and Todoroki awaited instruction. All right, students, we'll be going over how you use your quirks currently and seeing if we can't find new ways to implement them. All Might explained. Midoriya, you're up first, Aizawa explained. Show us a new application of your quirk. With how your quirk works, you should have plenty of abilities that aren't just making a bigger blast. Yes, sir. Izuku nodded. The verdette didn't move, but the teachers did as they suddenly jerked and started to look around. Todoroki quirked an eyebrow at the strange behavior of the teachers. Izuku simply walked behind the teachers, and Todoroki watched as Aizawa's hair began to float as the man's eyes glowed red. Several seconds later, all three teachers seemed to get their heads back on straight. Midoriya? Samintas questioned when he didn't see the verdette student. Right here, sensei. Izuku called out from behind them. What was that, young Midoriya? All Might asked, seemingly shaken. A quirk I got from a man in Tokyo. It's a shame he was too scared to be a hero. His quirk is amazing, Izuku lamented. That's a trump card quirk of mine. It's called total sensory deprivation, and, well, you experienced what it can do. A complete sensory void, Aizawa remarked. All five senses shut off entirely in an instant. I'm guessing it's a psychic subtype? Yes, sensei, Izuku confirmed. That was an unsettling experience, Samintas commented, but it was incredibly effective for subduing people. Indeed, young Midoriya, an excellent non-combative use of your quirk. All Might praised the teen. Izuku almost squealed at getting a compliment from his idol. Todoroki, show us what you can do, Samintas instructed. The dual-haired student nodded and unleashed a huge wave of ice in a wave in front of him. That's what you've been doing since the first day. Aizawa looked at the teen with a glare. His eyes turned red as his quirk activated. I told you you'll have to give it your all if you want to remain in the hero course. I don't need to use fire, Todoroki stated dully. Do you want to be expelled? Aizawa questioned the teen. If you won't give it your all, you don't belong in the hero course. Use your fire and show us what you can do. That or you can leave. I won't use his quirk, Todoroki ground out, his fists clenched at his sides. Young Midoriya, return to the rest of the students. All Might instructed, and Izuku saw the seriousness in the symbol of peace's eyes. Yes, sensei. Izuku bowed and jogged back to the rest of class as all three teachers gathered around Todoroki. He didn't know what that was about, but to see someone outright reject what seemed to be half of their own quirk was odd. It wasn't his place to pry, though. The next day, you all need to decide on something today, Aizawa stated seriously. Something that'll affect your entire class going forward. All of the students tensed up, expecting another threat of expulsion. You need to choose your class representatives. That's so normal. Almost the entire class exclaimed. I wasn't done. Aizawa's eyes went red and his hair floated upwards as he glared at his students. There was an instant silence from the teens. As I was saying, whoever you pick will become the de facto leaders of your class, so choose carefully. There was an instant clamoring from the students as almost everyone raised their hands and called out that they wanted to do it. After a few moments of no one being able to hear over the others, someone finally got everyone's attention. That person also happened to be raising their hand the highest of anyone. People, please. Ida called, and everyone eventually gave him their attention. Desire doesn't equate to ability. This office requires someone that everyone can put their trust in. But we've only known each other for about a week. That's not a lot of time to build trust. So you spoke up. Ida looked like he was about to say something, but someone else spoke up before him. Ida is correct, though. Momo spoke up. Whoever leads the class should have everyone's trust. They should be chosen by at least the majority of the class. I vote for Midoriya. Cammy smiled as she sent the verdette a wink. He's already helping everyone in class without asking for anything in return. I vote for Midoriya-kun too. Ochako smiled brightly. Hold on, Ida exclaimed. If we are going to elect our representatives, then we should do it formally. Aizawa-sensei, will you allow this? Do whatever, just hurry up. Aizawa answered from his yellow sleeping bag. All the students' sweat dropped at seeing their homeroom teacher already dozing off. Over the next several minutes, the class wrote their votes onto slips of paper and placed them in a box that Ida brought around. When the glasses-wearing team counted up all of them and wrote the totals beside the corresponding names, it was to a surprising result for some. Why the hell did so many of you vote for the shitty leech? Bakugo, predictably, exploded at the results. E8 votes. Izuku stared at the number stunned. The student with the next highest number was Momo at 3 votes. So, your representative is Midoriya and your vice representative is Yaoyorozu. Aizawa spoke up as the Verdette and Ravenet stood in front of the class. Izuku was trying not to fidget while Momo smiled slightly. I'll do my best, guys, to be worthy of the trust you placed in me. Izuku bowed to the class. He saw a few of his classmates start clapping and wondered who besides Kami and Ochako had voted for him. Maybe he could ask at lunch. Chapter 6. Incident and Practice. What in the world? Izuku blinked as he saw the crowd of reporters gathered in front of UA at the gate. There had to be a crew from every news station in the Tokyo metropolitan area, even a few from outside of Tokyo too. What's it like to have All Might as a teacher? A reporter asked as soon as they caught sight of Izuku. The Verdette was immediately flustered by having a microphone shoved into his face. What? Izuku blinked at being put on the spot. Get the hell out of my way. Bakugo's loud voice could be heard from a different part of the crowd. Izuku noticed other students being crowded by the mass of reporters as well. Ochako, Jiro, Mina, and Toru were practically back-to-back. Sato and Shoji could be seen near the edge, both of the taller teens with mics being shoved in their faces too. He also noticed a few other students being swarmed too, an orangette girl and a verdette girl, a black-haired boy wearing a headband, and a blonde teen who seemed to be enjoying the attention he was getting. Izuku presumed these must be some of the students from 1B. What do you think you're doing? A loud, growling voice barked out at the group of reporters. Several of the students let out sighs of relief as Hound Dog, the UA counselor, showed up. You're interfering with our students' ability to get to school. Cease this harassment of our students and leave the premises or the police will be called. We just want to know about All Might. A reporter yelled back. All Might isn't available for interviews today, so leave, Aizawa stated while walking up to the gate with present mic. Why should we listen to such a shabby-looking man? A different reporter demanded. Aizawa just exhaled heavily. This is why he hated the media. You know, they're causing such a ruckus. They're almost like villains. Present Mike whispered to Aizawa. Can't we just beat them up? Not unless you want your reputation dragged through the mud. Aizawa shook his head. Let's just wait for the police. While Aizawa and Present Mike kept the reporter's attention, Hound Dog ushered the students past the gate so they could get to class. Izuku calmed down from the surprise of a reporter ambush as he walked to class. One reporter had gotten too impatient and tried to cross the gate after the last of the students had entered. She was met with UA's security system, also known as the UA barrier, as the massive steel gate slammed into place. With over a meter of reinforced steel between them and any form of All Might interview, the multitudes of reporters had no choice but to complain and wait. -1 A classroom. Man, those reporters were, like, so twisted. Kami pouted as the class chatted before homeroom. Get a clue, right? You said it. Jiro shook her head. Didn't expect to get hounded for an interview about All Might this morning. They shouted so many questions at me. I couldn't get a word in any way. Sato scratched his cheek. I'm glad the teachers showed up when they did, Karo. Siyu smiled softly. Yeah, it was getting to be a bit much. Ochako messed with her hair. Take your seats. Homeroom is about to start, Aizawa announced as he entered the classroom. They all rushed to comply before he started glaring at them with his quirk. Lunch. Please make the numbers stop. Mina whined as they all went through the lunch line. They'd all just finished math class with ectoplasm, and several of them were just done. My head hurts. Kaminari agreed with the pinkette. Are we sure this is high school math? I think ectoplasm has us doing university-level stuff. Not to mention that we already have homework for both English and classical Japanese. Kami pouted as they all started to pick out seats. Seriously, chill on the workload, am I right? Totally agree. Toru groaned, the invisible girl's shoulders slumping as she sat down. Homework every class is going to kill me. The students all started to eat. The delicious food went a long way to soothing their woes. Lunch Rush knew exactly how to make comfort food. Even from standard ingredients, the pro could whip up a meal that would leave anyone smiling. Even the rice is super tasty. Ochako sighed happily as she ate. She was sitting between Izuku and Tsuyu. I couldn't agree more. Lunch Rush is a truly wonderful chef. Momo smiled as she enjoyed her meal. After finishing her next bite of food, the Creation Quirk user asked a question. I must admit, I'm curious as to who voted for whom as the class representative. Would anyone be willing to indulge my curiosity? I voted for Midoriya-kun. He's been super helpful ever since I met him, especially back at the entrance exam. Ochako couldn't stop her giggles seeing Izuku's face go red. Indeed, your willingness to help others and your decisive actions in the battle trial are admirable. That's why I voted for you. Ida nodded to Izuku. I voted for Yamamoto. Even with Mineta being a dead weight, she still won her battle trial. Not to mention we all know she's easily the smartest in our class. Jiro smiled at the Ravenette. She got a beaming smile from the Momo in return. Me too. Momo has been awesome. She even agreed to help me with chemistry so I can try and implement some of Midori's suggestions. Mina grinned at both of them. Mina-san, Jiro-san. Momo seemed to sparkle as she smiled happily. I'll do my best to live up to your expectations. Thank you for your trust. I don't understand something. Ochako turned to face Ida. Didn't you really want to become class rep, Ida? You've definitely got the look for it down. I don't think she thought that through all the way. Izuku glanced between Ochako and Ida. The brunette was happily eating while Ida seemed to have little reaction to her comment. Ambition and suitability are different. Ida shook his head as he explained. I made the choice I felt would be the best. The admiration I hold for my brother is what inspired me to become a hero. However, I realized over the last few days that I'm not ready to be a leader like him yet. That is something I'll have to work on. Midoriya outperformed us all in the entrance exams, going on to break the old record and doing so in a manner befitting a hero. He's also been incredibly supportive of the rest of us, freely offering his analytical skills and suggestions to us all. I aspire to match his example as a hero too. Ida. Izuku was shocked. He'd never received such outstanding praise from a classmate before, let alone a hero course student. He was truly touched by Ida's words. I totally get that. Toru laughed. That's why I voted for Midori too. He's super nice, he helps us out, and he even healed my feet as good as new. Thanks you guys. Izuku smiled at all of them. He was so moved by how supportive his classmates were. You know I voted for Midoriya. He's super strong, super helpful, and super cute too. Cammy put her arm around his shoulders and pulled him into a side hug. Izuku's face almost went nuclear. Several people would swear they saw steam coming from the top of his head. Speaking of the record-breaking that Edison mentioned, I'm quite curious about the regular entrance exams. The more I hear about it, the more I'm certain that the recommended students must have had an entirely different test. Momo looked thoughtful before taking another bite of her lunch. I thought it was pretty fun. We had to rack up points by destroying robots. Mina exclaimed brightly. They even had this giant robot called a zero-pointer. But we weren't meant to fight that one. It was supposed to just be a gimmick that we had to avoid. Not supposed to, but we could, right Midoriya? Ochako smiled at the verdette, her cheeks slightly darker than normal. Well, I just didn't want you to get hurt, Uraraka-san. Izuku's cheeks had barely cooled from Kami's hug, and now they were right back to red. It's what a hero would do, right? Yeah, you were really cool too. Ochako smiled at him. Izuku smiled back, and they both had bright red faces. They're so cute, Mina whispered to Toru, the invisible girl muffling her own giggles as she agreed. Huh, that kind of exam favors combat-oriented quirks more so than any other type, Momo said, before frowning slightly. Several quirks, though powerful, wouldn't be of much use against machines. She's got a point. Toru chimed in. I had to figure out that the robots had off switches on their bodies. I wasted the first minute and a half of the test trying to figure out how to take down the first robot I found. But you're here with us now, so you did great. Mina exclaimed, raising her hand for a high five and getting one from the invisible girl. So Midoriya saved you, Hachiko-chan? Kami teased the brunette, who blushed and nodded. She looked down at her food with bright pink cheeks. Well, how did he save you, Ochako? Mina asked with a grin. Did he take a hit for you? Or did he save you from a robot you didn't see coming? It wasn't that big of a deal. Izuku was also looking down at his food now in a futile effort to hide his own embarrassed face. He pulled me out of the rubble the 0-pointer caused. Ochako looked up with sparkling eyes. Then he carried me to safety while healing my broken ankle. Her cheeks were pink as she told them about that part. Then he sets me down and tells me to keep running, that he's going to stop it from getting close to any of the other examinees. Then he cut the 0-pointer in half with a giant, super hot blade of air. All eyes turned to face Izuku at that. Ida was one of the only ones that didn't, as he had witnessed the event firsthand. Izuku saw the shocked and impressed looks of his classmates and didn't know how to react. You cut that giant thing in half, Kami exclaimed in shock. Midori, that's crazy. Mina blinked at him. Wow. Toru sounded just as shocked as everyone else looked. I wasn't sure that would happen though. Izuku shook his head. I compiled too many quirks together too, so I ended up hurting myself. I barely had enough energy left to heal up my arm. Then I fell unconscious on. He couldn't finish the thought, and a side glance at Ochako revealed that the gravity girl was also blushing. On my lap, Ochako mumbled as she caught his eyes and gave him a soft smile. Izuku felt better immediately upon seeing it. Ochako clearly didn't mind what had happened and was letting him know. Oh my. Momo's cheeks were a bright pink now too. That's actually adorable. Jiro grinned at the two of them. So cute, Mina and Toru cooed in unison. Is that why you two seem close already, Karo? Siu asked bluntly, her index finger on her chin as she looked at Ochako and Izuku next to her. What? And no. It's not. Ochako was so flustered she couldn't form words. Izuku wasn't much better as he kept trying to speak, but no words came out. Kami had a mischievous grin on her lips. Looks like you're ahead of the rest of us, Cheiko-chan. Ochako hid her face in her hands, barely avoiding using her quirk and sending herself floating off. Hey Midoriya-kun, you can rest your head on my lap next, okay? The fawn-haired girl winked at him while gently patting her left thigh. Izuku felt himself get almost lightheaded from how hot his face was getting. And maybe a change of topic for a bit? Momo questioned, and all of the girls agreed, though much giggling took place first. Just as conversation shifted to a new topic, the group was interrupted by the blaring of an alarm. Everyone in the lunchroom was startled by the sudden noise. Those with sensitive ears, or quirks that amplified their sense of hearing like Jiro, clapped their hands over their ears with cries of pain and shock. A loud, mechanical voice started blasting over the loudspeaker a second later. Attention! Security level 3 has been broken. All students must evacuate in an orderly fashion. The message proceeded to loop after that as the cafeteria quickly descended into panic. What's security level 3? Ida yelled to an upperclassman as they stood up. It means someone has infiltrated the building. This has never happened in the 3 years I've been here. Hurry up and get out. The older teen yelled back as he ran. Ow! Back off! Mina yelled as an elbow jabbed into her side. The tide of rushing students had swept up their group. In the chaos, Izuku had instinctively grabbed onto the closest of his classmates. In this case, he'd grabbed Tiu and Momo's hands and pulled them near the wall to avoid the crowd a bit. Stay together, guys. Ochako tried to yell over the noise. Hey! Jiro yelled as she was shoved to the side and into Toru. People are going to get hurt if this keeps up. Kami yelled as she pushed against the crowd with Mina at her side. Ida had been shoved against the glass, but this let him see outside. The glasses-wearing teen gaped when he saw the reporters from this morning on the campus grounds. He saw several people rushing towards the incoming reporters, teachers he realized a second later. If the teachers are dealing with the press, then there's no one to turn off the alarm. Everyone will keep panicking unless they're told. But even as he thought this, he had no idea how to convey it to the panicking crowd of students. He was about to try to yell something, anything to get some attention, when a sudden feeling of calm pervaded his mind. Midoriya-chan, Tiu croaked out as Izuku's eyes glowed with a blue light. Empathic force, emotional shift, amplification, efficiency. Izuku compiled and activated these 4 quirks to bring the chaos to an end. Emotional shift let Izuku freely control his own emotions, a useful quirk he'd copied from a woman Kansai. Right now, he was setting his emotional state to calm in preparation for his next move. Empathic force allowed Izuku to force his current emotional state on one person that he designated. He'd copied it during his first foray into asking people online about copying their quirks for his future hero career. Boosting the effect of empathic force to incorporate everyone in the cafeteria with both amplification and efficiency was the fastest way to end the developing stampede. As the panic and chaos was replaced by the enforced calm, the noise quieted down and people stopped moving. Everyone simply stood where they were, completely calm and even moving away from each other so that no one was being crushed or shoved anymore. Midoriya-kun, the press is trespassing on the campus. Ida calmly informed everyone. In this calm state, he only barely raised his voice, just enough so that Izuku was able to hear him. Splitting his focus further, something that Izuku had only a bit of experience with considering that he only occasionally multitasked, he activated 2 more quirks. Amplifier and Soothing Voice were the quirks of choice. Everyone, please remain calm. Izuku spoke in a loud, yet very soothing tone. The reporters from this morning seem to have made their way onto the campus. The teachers are dealing with it now. Please walk to your designated evacuation point so that the staff knows your location. Once this is done, we can all return to our normal school day. The reporters? Was the confused statement that followed as Izuku released his multiple quirks. The blue glow left his eyes, and the verdette exhaled heavily. Even boosting empathic force so that it could affect multiple targets didn't change the fact that it required the same amount of energy for each person. There were at least 300 students in the cafeteria at the moment. Izuku had just drained himself of more energy than his mostly eaten lunch would provide. If they still had heroics classes today, he might be in for a rough time. Midoriya, are you okay? Tsuyu questioned it, seeing his tired eyes. I'm fine. That just took a good amount of energy. Izuku smiled at the frog-like girl. Tsuyu smiled back with a small hint of pink on her cheeks. Was that another quirk, Midoriya-san? Momo asked him softly. 6 of them, technically. Izuku chuckled lightly. But empathic force is an energy drain, especially when boosted. Soothing Voice and Amplifier make a good combination, though. Let's walk and talk, Momo suggested with a smile as she and Tsuyu walked with Izuku. Class 1A made it to their designated evacuation spot without trouble. Almost everyone in the class was praising Izuku for his quick thinking and for taking charge of the emergency situation. It wasn't until Mina had pointed it out that Izuku, Tsu, and Momo realized they hadn't let go of each other's hands yet. With bright red cheeks all around, the 3 let go and tried to ignore the awkwardness. You're all here, good work. Aizawa spoke up a minute later when he rounded the corner. Midoriya, Principal Nizu wants to see you after school today. Ah, yes, sensei. Izuku nodded. Can I ask why? Lunch Rush saw what you did during the emergency and how you kept the situation under control. He told Nizu, and the principal wants to personally thank you. Aizawa informed his class's representative. Yes, sensei. Izuku couldn't stop the small, happy smile that formed on his face. The principal was giving him personal recognition for his actions. He couldn't wait to tell his parents tonight. Now that the police are dealing with the vultures, we can resume our normal school activities. Aizawa informed the class as he led them back to their classroom. What they didn't need to know was that the UA barrier had been destroyed, turned to dust somehow, and with none of the reporters having a quirk capable of that. Nizu already had Power Loader analyzing the remains of the gate. The Chimera-like principal was currently overseeing the removal and arrests of several of the reporters. The police captain that had arrived was taking down the statements of the pro-hero and principal. Heroics class. All right, today we'll be working on a common combat scenario that heroes often find themselves in. All Might spoke to the students of 1A. That is being outnumbered. Many times villains will work in groups to pull off crimes. A hero must be prepared to face down multiple opponents alone if the situation calls for it. This led to quite a bit of chatting and whispers among the class. Some were excited, others not so much. Izuku could already feel Bakugo glaring at the back of his head. The ash blonde clearly wanted another shot at him. Now, Do we have any volunteers to be the first hero? All Might asked. Immediately multiple hands shot up. Bakugo, Kirishima, Momo, Ida, Izuku, Sato, Tokoyami, Shoji, and Mina all had their hands raised. All right then, let's have young Yaoyorozu go first. All Might selected, much to the grumbling Bakugo's annoyance. Yes, sensei. Momo stepped forward. She was still using her current hero costume since Izuku's redesign wouldn't be complete for a bit longer. Mineta was quietly enjoying the visuals, trying not to attract attention and be called out for it. Now for your opponents. All Might looked over the group of students. Let's have young Shiro, young Aoyama, and young Mineta. The three boys stepped up and stood across from Momo. The rest of the class stepped back and All Might explained the rules of the bout. This match will be decided by capture or time limit. If young Yaoyorozu is restrained and unable to move, you three win. If all three of you are rendered unable to move, or if 5 minutes pass, then she wins. Do you understand the exercise? Yes, sensei. All four acknowledged. All right, begin. All Might yelled as he leapt backwards to give the students space. Momo instantly created a staff from her arm. With it a spin, she caught 3 of Mineta's purple balls on the staff. She leapt to the side to dodge Aoyama's laser, then had to demonstrate her flexibility by bending backwards to avoid a shot of Shiro's tape. Not wanting to give 3 ranged fighters space to work with, Momo dashed forward. She created a net from her stomach and tossed it at the backpedaling Mineta. The pop-off user threw his balls at the net, but didn't stop it from covering him and sticking the net to the ground. Mineta realized his quirk had been turned against him when he couldn't force the net off. His balls stuck to everything but him. Now they'd stuck the net to the ground, and Mineta wasn't able to remove them once they'd stuck to something. He also didn't have anywhere near the strength needed to tear the net. Holy crap, she's fast, Shiro commented as he and Aoyama split up to try and pincer Momo. But not as fast as my sparkles, Aoyama called out as he fired his laser at Momo. The Ravenet dodged and her hand glowed with her quirk. A few seconds later, a canister rolled along the ground. With a hiss, the canister erupted into a thick white smoke that obscured Shiro and Aoyama's vision. Crap, Shiro yelled. Where'd she go? I don't know, Aoyama called back. Dude, back to back, Shiro instructed and Aoyama obliged. The two covered each other's back as they waited for the smoke to clear. Shiro aimed his elbows while Aoyama prepared his laser. From the smoke, a long object emerged. Shiro hit it with his tape only to find it was Momo's staff. It still had Mineta's pop-off balls on it even. Momo leapt from the smoke and grabbed her staff. With a heave, she tossed Ito her left. It took Shiro a split second to realize his tape was still attached to the staff and connected to his elbows. He detached the tape from himself, but the damage was done. Aoyama was taped to the ground, and the purple balls on the staff were stuck to him. The blonde was unable to fire off his laser with the staff sitting against the focusing belt. Oh crap, Shiro exclaimed as he jumped back to avoid Momo's newly created staff. He fired tape at Momo only for the recommendation student to swat it aside with her staff. Got you, he cheered as he yanked the staff out of Momo's hands. His triumph was short-lived though. Momo had already made everything she needed while under the cover of smoke. A single-shot riot gun was pulled from behind Momo's back, having been secured to the dictionary on her lower back. With a pull of the trigger and a sound of compressed gas, Shiro doubled over as the large rubber bullet slammed into his stomach. He hit his knees as he hacked and wheezed, trying to get back the breath that had been knocked out of him. Surrender, Momo spoke as she held a third staff to Shiro's neck. Exercise over, All Might called out. Yaoyorozu wins. Momo withdrew her staff and heard the cheers and applause from some of her classmates. Checking to make sure Shiro wasn't injured more than she intended, the tape quirk user waved her off. He'd be fine, though he was definitely going to recovery girl after class. The bruise this would leave was going to take days if not a week to heal otherwise. Momo made a box cutter to free Aoyama from the tape and helped the blonde to his feet. On the way back to the class, she also cut the net, trapping Mineta. The short boy crawled out of the net and walked back to the class with the other 3. Excellent work, you 4. All Might praised them with his signature smile. Congratulations to you, young Yaoyorozu. A most excellent match. Thank you, sensei. Momo bowed with a smile. You made excellent use of both your quirk and your opponent's quirks. All Might nodded to the girl. That's the kind of thinking and resourcefulness that will take you far in the hero field. I was just using what I knew of their quirks beforehand. Momo replied. I learned the value of being able to quickly analyze a person's quirk firsthand. The Ravenet glanced at Izuku. The Verdette smiled brightly at her, and Momo felt her cheeks heat up slightly. You applied it very well. All Might nodded to her. Thank you, sir. Momo bowed again before returning to the class. Now then, let's have young Midoriya as the hero, with young Sato, young Utsushimi, and young Ida as the villains. All Might instructed, and the four stepped forwards. Go easy on me, okay, Midoriya? Kami winked at him. Izuku stilled his heart, which had just tried to speed up rapidly, and shook his head at the fawn-haired girl. Begin. All Might called, and the match began. Hey, Midoriya. Sato called out as Kami skipped back to make some distance, and Ida ran to cover Izuku's back. I took your advice and tried out a few things. With that, the brunette teen pulled a container off his belt and dumped the contents into his mouth. Sato's body bulked up slightly, and he charged at Izuku head first. Physicality boost, efficiency, enhanced function, kinetic boost, durability up, force multiplier. Izuku rapidly compiled his melee combat combination and met Sato head-on. He dodged Sato's fist and landed a punch to the larger teen's chest. Sato barely budged, however. Izuku blinked, knowing that combination let him punch through the villain robots at the entrance exam. Sanding sugar. Turns out it ups my durability quite a bit with the same ratio of strength I gained from granulated sugar. Sato chuckled as he wrapped Izuku in a bear hug. I got him. Sorry about this, Sato. Izuku apologized as he grabbed Sato's side. Air compression, amplification, force projection, quirk nullification. A blast of air sent Sato onto his ass. His arms let go of Izuku as he hacked and gasped. He didn't understand. How did he get hit this hard? He still had plenty of time. Sato. Ida came blitzing in with a kick aimed at Izuku. Reverse force took effect with a thought. Ida came to a sudden stop, just hanging in the air for a split second. Then he was launched backwards with the same force he'd come at Izuku with. The white-armored hero course student went tumbling backwards along the ground at speed. Raph. Sato had retaken his feet and launched a haymaker towards Izuku's head. Reverse force activated and Sato was hit with the force of his own attack. The brunette was knocked flat on his ass. Izuku staggered as an unseen kick slammed into his ribs. Even with durability up, active, he still felt the kick. Another blow came, this one aimed at his legs, and Izuku stumbled. She's using illusions to hide herself. Izuku quickly deduced as he looked around. Ida was getting up, as was Sato again, so he didn't have time to play cat and mouse with Kami. An air cannon combination struck the ground, sending dust and dirt into the air. It also blew away the rainbow-hued mist of Kami's quirk, revealing her staggering back from the unexpected blast. Izuku capitalized on Kami's unsteadiness and sent her back with another air blast. The fawn-haired girl actually rolled with the blast and came to a stop in a kneeling position. Ida and Sato were both closing in, so Izuku jumped backwards with his increased strength from his active quirks. For what he was about to do, he needed to be able to see both Sato and Ida. The two were quick to follow him, and Izuku let them get close. When they were close enough, Izuku hit them with a combination he'd wanted to try out for a while. Reverse force took effect, both teens freezing momentarily in their charge. Before they were hit with their own force, Izuku activated another quirk as he looked into their eyes. Paralyzed glare activated, and Izuku's green eyes turned a bright yellow. Both Ida and Sato found their bodies unresponsive as they were